The wedding dress hung from Bella's shoulders like a shroud. She stood motionless before the ornate mirror, watching her reflection with detached curiosity, as though observing a stranger. The ivory silk caught the afternoon light streaming through the tall windows, transforming her into a spectral figure against the dark mahogany furnishings of her bedroom. Behind her stood William Thornwood, her father. His weathered face revealed no pride, no tenderness, only the cold calculation of a man who viewed his daughter as property to be traded. His eyes met hers in the reflection, and the space between them seemed to stretch into an unbridgeable chasm. There are wounds, Bella thought to herself, that don't show on skin, wounds that form when choice is stolen away. She adjusted the pearl necklace at her throat, her mother's only legacy. The weight of it pressed against her collarbone like a collar. Outside wedding guests had begun to arrive, their carriages crunching on the gravel drive of the Thornwood estate. "Your hair," William said, his voice as dry as autumn leaves. "Fix it before you come down." He left without waiting for a response, the door closing with quiet finality behind him. Bella's fingers trembled as she reached for a hairpin. In the mirror, her eyes betrayed her, not the obedient daughter, but the woman who had made her choice 18 months ago, a choice that had nothing to do with this wedding. 18 months earlier, the summer drought had turned the prairie brittle. Bella rode her Palomino mare along the edge of Thornwood land, far beyond where her father's men patrolled. Her white cotton dress billowed in the hot wind, her dark hair streaming behind her. At 22, Isabella Thornwood was known throughout the territory for her beauty, her education back east, and her father's fortune built on cattle and railroads. What no one knew was her secret rebellion, the small acts of defiance hidden beneath her perfect manners and demure smiles. She reined her horse to a stop at the sound of voices. Through the tall grass, she glimpsed a group of Comanche warriors gathered by a small stream that had nearly dried to nothing. Their horses stamped restlessly nearby, ribs showing through their hides. The men spoke in low voices, gesturing at the pitiful trickle of water. Bella knew what drought meant for the tribes. Pushed to ever smaller territories, denied access to the best water sources, the Comanche faced starvation for themselves and their horses. Instead of turning back, she urged her horse forward. The warriors tensed as she approached, hands moving to weapons. But Bella raised her empty palms. "There's better water," she said, her voice carrying across the space between them. 5 miles west, a spring that never runs dry, even in the worst drought. One warrior stepped forward, taller than the others, with shoulders that spoke of strength earned through survival rather than leisure. Unlike the others, he wore his hair cut shorter on one side, with a single eagle feather tied at his temple. His face bore the dignified weariness of one who carried his people's future. "Why would you tell us this?" he asked, his English precise and careful. "Because water belongs to no one," Bella replied, "and everyone deserves to drink." The warrior studied her with dark eyes that seemed to read the truth written on her soul. "I am Raven Wing," he said finally. "Isabella Thornwood." She hesitated, then added, "But I prefer Bella." A flicker of recognition crossed his face at her surname, but he said nothing of it. "Show us this water, Bella Thornwood." For 3 weeks, Bella made excuses to ride out alone. She guided the Comanche band to the hidden springs, showed them game trails her father's hunters overlooked, and brought medicines when one of their children fell ill with fever. With each meeting, she found herself drawn more deeply into conversation with Ravenwing. He spoke of growing up between two worlds, the traditional ways of his people and the encroaching reality of white settlement. He had studied at a government school, learned the white man's language and ways, only to return to his tribe, determined to find a path forward that preserved their essence while adapting to survive. "My father says the Comanche are savages," Bella said one evening as they walked along the spring's edge, the setting sun painting the water copper. "But everything I've seen tells me he's wrong." "Your father," Ravenwing said carefully, "is not the first white man to call us savage while committing savagery himself." Bella stopped walking. "Bella, what do you mean?" Ravenwing turned to face her, his expression guarded. "Some stories are not mine to tell, Bella Thornwood. Some wounds run too deep." Something in his voice made her shiver despite the summer heat. "Tell me about your mother," he said, changing the subject. "You wear her necklace always." Bella's hand went to the pearls at her throat. She died when I was 12. She taught me to read, to think for myself. Her voice softened. She was never truly happy with my father. Sometimes I think she simply faded away like a flower without sunlight. And you, Ravenwing asked, are you a flower starving for light? The question hung between them, dangerous and true. Bella looked up at him, at the way the dying sun caught in his eyes, and felt something inside her shift like earth breaking open for a seed. Yes, she whispered. Their first kiss came later that night, beneath a sky scattered with stars. His hands cradled her face as though she were made of precious clay. When they pulled apart, Bella felt the world had tilted on its axis, leaving her forever changed. This cannot be, Ravenwing said, his voice rough with emotion. Your world and mine. I don't care about worlds, Bella interrupted. I care about this, about you. But they both knew the truth. Their love was forbidden not just by her father or white society, but by the practical reality of two people caught in the grinding wheels of history. Still, for weeks they met in secret. Beneath the moon by the hidden spring, they spoke of dreams of literature, of philosophy, of a future where boundaries of skin and history might dissolve. They shared stories of their childhoods, their hopes, their fears. And with each meeting, love grew between them like wildflowers after fire, improbable, beautiful, and fragile. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Bella recognized her father's handwriting immediately, the sharp, decisive strokes announcing his return from business in Kansas City. With him would come her fiancé, James Harrison, a banker's son she had met only twice. That night she rode to the spring one last time. I won't marry him, she told Ravenwing, her voice fierce with determination. I'll run away. To where? He asked gently. The world is not kind to women alone. Less kind to women who love men like me? Then take me with you, she pleaded. To your people. Ravenwing shook his head, pain etched across his features. My people struggle to feed themselves, and they would not easily accept a white woman, the daughter of... He stopped himself. The daughter of what? Bella pressed. It doesn't matter. He took her hands in his. What matters is that I must leave. My tribe begins the journey to the sacred mountain tomorrow. I must complete the vision quest I've delayed too long. Okay, how long will you be gone? A month, perhaps 2. He touched her cheek. When I return, we will find a way forward, together. Their goodbye was desperate, clutching at each other beneath the stars, as though they might absorb each other's essence through skin and breath. I'll wait for you, Bella whispered, no matter what. William Thornwood's return changed everything. At 55, he carried himself with the rigid authority of a man accustomed to obedience. His gray hair was cropped short, his mustache precisely trimmed, his black suits immaculate. Power radiated from him like heat from a forge. He greeted Bella with a cursory kiss on the cheek before presenting James Harrison, 35, lean, with cold blue eyes and meticulously groomed sideburns. The wedding will be in 2 weeks, William announced over dinner. The arrangements have already been made. Bella set down her fork. Father, I barely know Mr. Harrison. You'll have a lifetime to know him, William replied without looking up from his plate. His father's bank is essential to my new ventures. And if I refuse, the words escaped before Bella could stop them. William's eyes snapped to hers and the temperature in the dining room seemed to drop. You won't. Later that night, he came to her room. Your behavior at dinner was unacceptable. Father, please, Bella began. I cannot marry a man I don't... You've been riding out alone, he interrupted, his voice dangerously quiet. For months now. Bella felt her blood turn cold. Did you think I wouldn't know? William continued. Did you think my men wouldn't report seeing you with that savage... Don't call him that, Bella said, her voice barely audible. William's hand struck her cheek with such force that she stumbled backward. You disgust me, he hissed. My own daughter rutting with an animal in the dirt. I love him, Bella said, straightening her spine, her cheek burning. And he is more of a man than you will ever be. William's face contorted with rage. You will marry Harrison in 2 weeks. You will never see that Indian again. And if you breathe a word of this shameful behavior, I will personally see that your savage and his entire band are hunted down like the dogs they are. Sonity. He slammed the door behind him, leaving Bella shaking with fear and fury. For the next 2 weeks, she was never left alone. Maria, the Mexican housekeeper who had helped raise Bella after her mother's death, was her only ally, sneaking messages to the spring in hopes that Ravenwing would return and find them. But there was no response. The wedding preparations continued relentlessly. Dresses were fitted, invitations, sent, flowers ordered from as far as Denver. Through it all, Bella moved like a ghost, searching desperately for a way out. The night before the wedding, Maria slipped into her room. "Señorita," she whispered urgently, "your father has done something terrible." "What is it?" Bella asked, clutching the older woman's hands. "He has sent for federal marshals." Maria said, her eyes wide with fear. "3 of them arrived an hour ago. I heard them talking. They plan to take you away if you refuse to marry." "Take me where?" "To an asylum. For women with unnatural desires." Maria crossed herself. "They say they have papers signed by doctors." Bella sank onto her bed, understanding dawning with horrific clarity. "He would rather lock me away than let me choose my own path." "There's more," Maria said, her voice dropping even lower. "Your father, he is not the man you think he is. 15 years ago, there was a Comanche village near the North Ridge. Your father led men there. They killed everyone, men, women, children." Bella covered her mouth to stifle a cry. "The chief," Maria continued, "tried to surrender. He stepped forward with peace signs. Your father shot him himself in front of the chief's young son." "Ravenwing," Bella whispered, the pieces falling into terrible place. "Ravenwing was that boy." Maria nodded solemnly. "He came back to this land seeking something. Perhaps justice, perhaps healing. But your father will kill him if he returns." Bella stood, newfound resolve hardening within her. "I need to leave tonight." "It's too late," Maria said, tears forming in her eyes. "They're watching every door, every stable. The wedding is at noon tomorrow. After that, I'll be Harrison's property," Bella finished. "Or locked away as a madwoman." She turned to the window, staring out at the vast prairie stretched beneath the moon, the same moon under which she had loved so freely. Somewhere out there, Ravenwing was completing his vision quest, unaware of the trap closing around them both. "What will you do?" Maria asked. Bella touched the pearl necklace at her throat. "The only thing I can. I'll say yes tomorrow, and then I'll find another way." The morning of the wedding dawned clear and merciless. Bella stood before the mirror in her wedding dress, her father, a dark presence behind her. In the reflection, she could see the bruise on her cheek, carefully covered with powder by Maria's gentle hands. She thought of Ravenwing on his vision quest, seeking wisdom from ancestors and spirits. She thought of her mother, who had withered away in this same house, trapped in a marriage without love. She thought of the Comanche village slaughtered on her father's orders, and of the boy who had watched his father die. William left her to finish dressing, and Bella's eyes hardened with determination. She would find a way through this. For herself, for Ravenwing, for a future where wounds might finally begin to heal. The church bells tolled noon. Guests filled the small white chapel that William Thornwood had built on his property 5 years earlier, a monument to a faith he proclaimed but never practiced. The wealthiest families from 3 territories sat in polished pews, fanning themselves against the summer heat. At the altar stood James Harrison, immaculate in his black suit, a satisfied smile playing at his lips. Beside him, William Thornwood surveyed the gathering with the pride of a general before a conquered city. Near the back, 3 men stood apart from the other guests. They wore suits rather than the typical Marshals attire, but the bulges beneath their jackets betrayed their firearms. Hawthorne, the eldest, had granite gray hair and eyes like flint. Corcoran was shorter, with a face mottled by smallpox scars. Pike, the youngest, stood slightly apart from the others, his expression carefully neutral, his complexion suggesting mixed heritage despite his efforts to hide it. The music began, and all heads turned toward the back of the church. Bella appeared in the doorway, a vision in white silk and lace. She moved down the aisle with measured steps, her face serene behind her veil, betraying nothing of the storm within. Just as she reached the altar, the church doors burst open. A figure stood silhouetted against the bright sunlight, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a strange combination of traditional Comanche garments and white man's clothes. A single eagle feather was tied in his hair. "Ravenwing," Bella whispered, her heart leaping into her throat. The entire congregation turned gasps, rippling through the crowd. William's face contorted with fury. Harrison stepped forward protectively while the three marshals moved their hands to their weapons. "Bella Thornwood," Ravenwing called, his voice filling the chapel. "I have returned as promised." William Thornwood raised his hand, signaling the marshals. "Arrest this man for trespassing and disrupting the peace." The marshals advanced, but Ravenwing stood his ground. "I come in peace," he said, "to speak truth before any vows are made in falsehood." "Remove him," William commanded. Hawthorne reached Ravenwing first, drawing his pistol. "You're coming with us, Indian." What happened next occurred so quickly that many witnesses later disagreed on the sequence of events. Ravenwing moved with lightning speed, disarming Hawthorne with a precise strike to the wrist. The pistol clattered to the floor. Corcoran drew his weapon, but before he could fire, Bella rushed forward. "Stop!" she cried, positioning herself between the marshals and Ravenwing. "This is madness." William Thornwood strode down the aisle, rage emanating from him in palpable waves. Isabella returned to the altar immediately. "No, Father," Bella said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I will not marry a man I don't love." "Then you leave me no choice." William nodded to the marshals. "Gentlemen, proceed as planned." Pike stepped forward, producing an official-looking document. "Isabella Thornwood, we have orders to remand you to the care of the Western Territories Asylum for Women on grounds of mental instability and moral degeneracy." Gasps and murmurs erupted from the wedding guests. Harrison looked between Bella and William, confusion, giving way to understanding, and then disgust. "You never told me she was insane," he said to William. "Not insane," William replied. "Merely confused. The doctors assure me that with proper treatment, she'll make a suitable wife yet." Bella felt a cold clarity descend upon her. "So this is your plan, Father. If I won't be sold in marriage, I'll be imprisoned as a madwoman." "It's for your own good," William said, his voice carrying the absolute certainty of a man who had never questioned his own judgment. "These unnatural feelings you've developed, they can be treated." Hawthorne and Corcoran moved toward Bella, producing shackles. "No," Ravenwing shouted, placing himself before Bella. "I will not let you take her." Hawthorne swung his fist, catching Ravenwing in the jaw. As he staggered backward, Corcoran struck him from behind with the butt of his pistol. Ravenwing fell to his knees. "Stop it!" Bella screamed, struggling as the marshals seized her arms. "You're killing him!" The wedding guests watched in horrified fascination. Some of the women had fainted. The men stood frozen, uncertain whether to intervene in what appeared to be official government business. Through her tears, Bella saw Pike hanging back, conflict evident in his eyes as he watched his colleagues beat Ravenwing. Something in his expression suggested he found no pleasure in this task. "Shackle her," William ordered, "and get that savage out of my church." As the cold metal closed around her wrists, Bella locked eyes with Ravenwing. Blood trickled from his temple, but his gaze remained fierce, determined. "I will find you," he mouthed silently. Then Hawthorne and Corcoran were dragging her back down the aisle, her wedding dress catching and tearing on the rough wooden floor. The last thing she saw before being thrust into the waiting carriage was Maria, standing at the church entrance, tears streaming down her weathered face. The carriage door slammed shut and darkness enveloped her. Miles away atop the sacred mountain, Ravenwing had completed his vision quest just hours earlier. For 20 days he had fasted, prayed, and opened himself to the wisdom of the ancestors. His chest bore fresh scars, ritual markings that told the story of his path forward. The vision had come on the 18th day after his body had grown weak and his mind had transcended ordinary boundaries. He had seen Bella standing at the edge of two worlds with a child in her arms, a child of mixed blood whose existence bridged divided peoples. He had seen blood on the prairie, but also healing. He had seen a new way of living, neither fully Comanche nor white, but something altogether new. The vision had given him certainty. He would return to Bella, and together they would forge this new path, even if it meant breaking with tradition, even if it meant facing her father's wrath. What he had not seen was the timing, that his return would coincide with her wedding day, that he would arrive too late to prevent her captivity. Now, as he regained consciousness on the church floor, the last of the shocked wedding guests were departing. Only William Thornwood remained, looking down at him with cold contempt. "You should have stayed with your kind," William said. Now you'll die like the rest of them did. Raven Wing spat blood onto the polished floor. I know what you did 15 years ago. My father offered peace, and you answered with bullets. A flicker of surprise crossed William's face, quickly replaced by indifference. Your father was a fool who didn't understand progress. Just like you. Where have they taken her? Raven Wing demanded, struggling to his feet. William smiled thinly. Somewhere you'll never find her. The doctors have special treatments for women who develop unnatural attractions to savages. Raven Wing lunged forward, but his injury slowed him. William easily sidestepped, drawing a small pistol from his jacket. I should kill you now, he said, aiming at Raven Wing's heart. But that would be too merciful. Instead, I'll let you live with the knowledge that she's suffering for your sake. He lowered the weapon. Get off my property. If I see you again, I won't be so generous. William Thornwood turned and walked away, leaving Raven Wing bleeding on the altar steps of the empty church. Outside, Maria waited until William had disappeared into the main house before approaching. She helped Raven Wing to his feet, supporting him as they made their way to the servants' quarters behind the kitchen. They've taken her to an asylum, Maria explained as she cleaned his wounds. But first they'll stop at the old trading post on Cripple Creek. Hawthorne has business there. How do you know this? Raven Wing asked. I hear things, Maria said simply. The men talk as if I don't exist. And Senor Thornwood, he has many secrets. She pressed a damp cloth to the cut on Raven Wing's temple. 15 years ago, I worked in that house when he returned from killing your people. He brought back trophies. Her voice broke. I cleaned blood from his boots for days. Raven Wing closed his eyes, ancient grief washing through him. My father believed peace was possible. He died for that belief. And what do you believe? Maria asked. Raven Wing touched the fresh scars on his chest, hidden beneath his torn shirt. I believe in finding a new way, not just for myself, but for my people. The old path leads only to extinction. And Bella, what is she to you in this new way? Everything, he answered without hesitation. She is the bridge between worlds that my vision foretold. Maria nodded as if confirming something she had long suspected. Then you must gather your warriors. Hawthorne and his men are dangerous, but they are only 3. With surprise on your side, I will need help, Raven Wing acknowledged. There are 6 warriors I trust with my life. Together we can track them to this trading post. There is one more thing you should know, Maria said, her voice dropping to a whisper. Pike, the youngest marshal, he is not what he seems. His mother was Cherokee. He hides his heritage, but perhaps he can be turned, Raven Wing finished, or at least made to hesitate. And Maria handed him a small bundle. Food for your journey? Go now before the others return. Raven Wing took her weathered hands in his. You risk much to help us. I have watched one woman die slowly in that house, Maria replied, thinking of Bella's mother. I will not watch another. Bella sat in darkness as the carriage rattled over rough terrain. Her wrists were raw from the shackles, her wedding dress torn and dirty. Across from her, Hawthorne watched with dispassionate eyes. Corcoran rode outside with the driver, while Pike followed on horseback. Where are you taking me? She demanded. First to the old trading post, Hawthorne answered. I have business there, then to the asylum in Denver. What kind of business? Hawthorne's thin lips curved in what might have been a smile. The profitable, kind Miss Thornwood. Your father isn't the only one with ventures in this territory. Bella felt a chill at his tone. My father will regret this. Your father, Hawthorne said, leaning forward, is a business partner. We provide certain services, he provides protection and investment. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. What services? Bella pressed, though she feared she already knew. Let's just say the asylum isn't the only destination for troublesome women in these parts. Hawthorne sat back. Though in your case, I believe the doctors genuinely are interested in your condition. Something about studying the degeneration of moral character in educated females. Bella fought back nausea. You're trafficking women, Hawthorne shrugged. I prefer to think of it as relocating resources to where they're most valued. The carriage hit a particularly deep rut, jostling them violently. Bella used the momentum to slam her shoulder into the door, which flew open. Without hesitation, she threw herself out, tumbling painfully onto the hard-packed dirt. She scrambled to her feet, hampered by her shackles and the remnants of her wedding dress. She managed only a few steps before Pike intercepted her on horseback, cutting off her escape. "Don't make this worse for yourself," he said, dismounting. Bella backed away. "Are you proud of what you do, Marshal Pike, selling women like cattle?" Something flashed in Pike's eyes, shame perhaps, or anger. Before he could respond, Hawthorne and Corcoran arrived, the latter grabbing Bella roughly by the arm. "That was foolish," Hawthorne said coldly. "Corcoran doesn't like it when people make his job difficult." Corcoran twisted Bella's arm behind her back, making her cry out in pain. "Enough," Pike said suddenly. "She's worth nothing damaged." "Getting soft, Pike." Corcoran sneered, but he relaxed his grip slightly. "Getting practical," Pike replied. "You want the doctor to reject her?" Hawthorne studied Pike with narrowed eyes. "He's right. Put her back in the carriage, and make sure the door is secured this time." As they dragged her back, Bella locked eyes with Pike. For a brief moment, she thought she saw a flicker of humanity beneath his carefully maintained facade. Then she was thrust back into darkness, the door bolting shut behind her. Ravenwing moved silently through the tall grass, tracking the carriage's progress. The wheel marks were clear in the soft earth, and occasional drops of blood. Bella's, he feared, provided confirmation of their path. By nightfall, he had reached the encampment where his most trusted warriors waited. Bear Claw, the eldest, had been his father's friend. Running Elk and Swift Arrow were brothers known for their skill with horses. Broken Lance had lost his family to smallpox, brought by white traders. Grey Wolf was the youngest, barely 20, but already renowned for his tracking abilities. They gathered around the small fire as Ravenwing explained what had happened. "So you would have us rescue a white woman?" Bearclaw asked, his weathered face skeptical. "The daughter of the man who massacred our people." "She is not her father," Ravenwing replied. "And my vision showed her as part of our future, a bridge between worlds." "Visions can be misinterpreted," Bearclaw countered. "Perhaps she is meant to be a warning, not a wife." Grey Wolf leaned forward. "I have seen her. Last summer when we were desperate for water, she showed us the hidden spring. She brought medicine when Singing Bird's child was sick. One kind white woman doesn't erase generations of betrayal," Broken Lance said bitterly. Raven Wing revealed the scars on his chest, the marks from his vision quest. "I have seen a future where our children survive, not by clinging to the past, but by finding a new path forward. Bella Thornwood is part of that path." Running Elk exchanged glances with his brother. "We have followed you since we were boys, Ravenwing. If you believe this woman is worth fighting for, we will stand with you." One by one, the others nodded their agreement, even the reluctant Bearclaw. "There is one more ally we might find," Ravenwing added. "One of the Marshals, Pike. Maria says he has Cherokee blood." "A man who denies his own people cannot be trusted," Bearclaw warned. "Perhaps," Ravenwing acknowledged, "but in these times we must find allies where we can." As the others prepared for sleep, Ravenwing walked to the edge of the camp. The night sky stretched above him, stars scattered like the dreams of ancestors. Somewhere beneath that same sky, Bella was captive, perhaps afraid, perhaps in pain. "I will find you," he whispered to the darkness, "whatever it takes." The old trading post at Cripple Creek had once been a bustling hub for trappers and traders. Now it stood half abandoned, its weathered timber walls leaning precariously, its windows boarded against the elements. Only the main building showed signs of recent use, lamplight flickered behind dirty glass, and fresh horse tracks marked the packed earth of the yard. Hawthorne escorted Bella inside, one hand gripping her arm, the other resting on his pistol. Corcoran followed close behind, while Pike remained outside with the horses. The interior smelled of tobacco, whiskey, and unwashed bodies. 3 men sat playing cards at a scarred wooden table. They looked up as Hawthorne entered with his captive. "Well, well," said the largest of them, a bearded giant with a scar bisecting his left eye. "What have we here?" "Business, Jericho," Hawthorne replied curtly. "Not pleasure." Jericho's eyes roved over Bella's torn wedding dress, lingering on the pearls at her throat. "Shame. She's a pretty one." She's spoken for, Hawthorne said. The doctor in Denver has paid a premium. Dr. Freeman asked another man, wiry and rat-faced. Heard he's got quite a collection now. Bella's stomach turned at the implication. Collection of what? Specimens, Hawthorne answered with clinical detachment. Women with unusual proclivities. The doctor studies the physical and mental characteristics of moral deviation. You mean he tortures women who don't conform to your twisted standards? Bella spat. Hawthorne shrugged. Science requires sacrifice, Miss Thornwood. He pushed her into a chair. We'll rest here tonight. Continue to Denver in the morning. Jericho leaned forward. What's her deviation then? She looks normal enough. Unnatural attraction to savages. Hawthorne said, pouring himself a whiskey from a bottle on the table. Specifically a Comanche buck who interrupted her wedding today. The men laughed, making crude suggestions that caused Bella's cheeks to burn with humiliation and rage. Lock her in the back room, Hawthorne ordered Corcoran, and search her for weapons. Corcoran's hands were rough as he patted her down, lingering inappropriately. When he reached for her pearl necklace, Bella jerked away. It was my mother's, she said fiercely. The only thing I have of hers. Let her keep the trinket, Hawthorne said dismissively. It's not worth anything anyway. Corcoran shoved her into a small back room that might once have been a storeroom. It had no windows, only a narrow cot and a chamber pot. The door locked from the outside with a heavy iron bolt. Alone in the darkness, Bella finally allowed herself to weep, not from fear or despair, but from pure distilled fury. When the tears subsided, she began methodically testing the strength of the walls, the door searching for any weakness that might offer escape. She would not wait to be rescued. She would save herself or die trying. Outside, the moon rose over the prairie, casting long shadows across the land. In those shadows, 6 Comanche warriors moved like ghosts, drawing ever closer to the trading post, where the woman who had bridged 2 worlds awaited her fate. Pike stood alone in the darkness, outside the trading post, the weight of his choices pressing down like an anvil on his chest. The night air carried the scent of sage and dust, stirring memories he had spent years burying. He removed his hat, running a hand through his dark hair that would curl like his mother's if he let it grow long. He thought of Bella Thornwood in her torn wedding dress, the defiance in her eyes even as they shackled her. Something in her reminded him of his mother, the same unflinching courage in the face of a world determined to break her spirit. From inside came the sound of coarse laughter. Pike knew what Hawthorne and Corcoran were capable of, what they had done to other women they'd transported. He had looked the other way, told himself it wasn't his business, that following orders was all that mattered. His fingers unconsciously traced the small wooden charm hidden in his vest pocket, a Cherokee protection symbol his mother had carved for him before she died. He had kept it despite the danger it posed to his carefully constructed identity. You can't belong to both worlds, his mother had told him, but you can be a bridge between them. He had chosen differently, hiding his heritage, becoming more vicious toward Indians than even his full-blooded white colleagues to prove his loyalty. And for what to be Hawthorne's errand boy, to help deliver innocent women to men like Dr. Freeman? The horses nickered softly, sensing something in the darkness. Pike's hand moved to his pistol as he scanned the perimeter of the trading post. Nothing moved, yet he felt watched. His instincts, inherited from ancestors who had survived by reading the language of forest and plain, told him they were not alone. Ravenwing signaled for his warriors to hold position. They had circled the trading post, assessing its weaknesses, counting adversaries. Besides the 3 marshals, there were 4 other men inside, traitors or outlaws. It made little difference. 7 against 6, not favorable odds in a direct confrontation. We wait, he whispered to Grey Wolf, who crouched beside him in the tall grass. Watch their patterns. Find the weakest point. Grey Wolf nodded, his young face solemn in the moonlight. The one outside, he stands apart from the others. Pike, Ravenwing confirmed. Maria said he has Cherokee blood. Can such a man be trusted? Not trusted, Ravenwing replied, but perhaps used. They watched as Pike paced the perimeter, his movements betraying his unease. Something troubled the young marshal, something that might be leveraged when the time came. Bear Claw materialized beside them like a shadow. The woman is held in a back room, one window too small for escape, door bolted from outside. Ravenwing absorbed this information, formulating a plan. We need a distraction, something to draw them out, divide their attention. The horses, suggested Grey Wolf. Drive them off, force some to give chase. Ravenwing considered this. Not yet. First, I want to understand their plans. Running Elk is closest to the main room. What has he heard? Bearclaw's weathered face creased with concern. They speak of selling women, of a doctor who experiments on them. The Thornwood man is part of this evil. Ravenwing's jaw tightened. Another crime to lay at William Thornwood's feet, another reason the man deserved justice. But vengeance was not his purpose tonight. Bella was all that mattered, her safety, her freedom. We move at dawn, he decided. When they are tired, their guard lowest. Swift Arrow and Broken Lance will create a distraction with the horses. Grey Wolf and Running Elk will take positions to prevent escape. Bearclaw and I will enter for Bella. And the mixed blood Marshal? Bearclaw asked. Ravenwing's eyes found Pike in the darkness. I will deal with him myself. Dawn broke over the prairie in a wash of pale gold. Inside the back room of the trading post, Bella had not slept. Her wrists were bloody where the shackles had chafed, but pain had kept her alert, focused. During the night, she had worked a nail loose from the rotting floorboards. It wasn't much of a weapon, but it was better than nothing. She had also discovered that one of the boards near the wall was loose, not enough to escape through, but perhaps enough to see what lay beyond. She heard movement outside her door, the sound of men waking, preparing for the day's journey. Soon they would come for her load, her back into the carriage, continue the journey to Denver, and the asylum where Dr. Freeman waited with his treatments. The bolt on her door scraped open. Corcoran entered, a plate of beans and salt pork in one hand. Breakfast, princess, he sneered. Eat up. It's a long road to Denver. Bella kept the nail hidden in her palm. I'm not hungry. Suit yourself. He set the plate down. We leave in an hour. Hawthorne wants you presentable for the doctor. Clean yourself up. He tossed a damp cloth at her, then turned to leave. Wait, Bella said. I need to... She gestured at the chamber pot. Corcoran rolled his eyes. Make it quick. As he stood with his back half turned, Bella lunged, driving the nail into his shoulder with all her strength. Corcoran howled in pain and surprise, staggering backward. Bella tried to push past him, but the chains between her wrists hindered her movement. He recovered quickly, backhanding her with such force that she slammed against the wall. You little bitch, he snarled, pulling the nail from his flesh. Blood stained his shirt. You'll pay for that. He grabbed her by the throat, pinning her against the wall. Bella clawed at his hand, struggling for breath, as black spots danced at the edges of her vision. The door burst open. Pike stood there, his expression thunderous. What the hell are you doing, Corcoran? Teaching the savage lover some manners. Corcoran spat, not releasing his grip. Pike's hand moved to his pistol. Hawthorne wants her unmarked. Let her go. Now. For a moment, Corcoran seemed ready to defy the order. Then, with a disgusted sound, he released Bella. She collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. She attacked me, Corcoran said, displaying his bloodied shoulder. With a damn nail. Pike's eyes flicked to Bella, something like respect flickering in their depths. Then you should have been more careful. Get Hawthorne to bandage that before you bleed all over the merchandise. Corcoran stormed out, cursing under his breath. Pike remained in the doorway, watching Bella as she struggled to her feet. That was stupid, he said quietly. He could have killed you. Better dead than delivered to your doctor, Bella replied hoarsely. Pike glanced over his shoulder, ensuring they were alone. Freeman is no doctor. He's a butcher with a government license. The admission surprised her. Then why are you taking me to him? Orders. Pike's face was impassive, but his eyes held conflict. It's not my place to question them. Isn't it? Bella challenged. Or is it easier to just follow orders than to examine what you're really doing? Pike's jaw tightened. You know nothing about me or my choices. I know you're better than this, Bella said, her voice softening. I can see it in your eyes. For a moment, something vulnerable showed in Pike's expression. Then his face hardened again. Be ready to leave in an hour, and don't try anything else. Corcoran won't be the one guarding you next time. He closed the door, the bolt sliding into place with finality. Bella leaned against the wall, her throat throbbing, her hopes of escape dwindling. But Pike's momentary hesitation had confirmed what she suspected. There was a decent man buried beneath the marshal's badge, if only she could reach him. However, outside, the first light of dawn revealed the trading post in all its dilapidated glory. Peeling paint, rotting timber, a roof patched with mismatched shingles. Behind the main building stood a collection of outhouses and a small stable where the horses were kept. Pike walked the perimeter one last time before they departed, scanning the surrounding prairie with uneasy eyes. The feeling of being watched had not abated with daylight. Near the eastern edge of the property, he found tracks, moccasin prints nearly erased by the morning breeze, but still visible to those who knew how to read the earth. Comanche based on the pattern. At least 5, possibly more. His heart rate quickened. The Indian from the church Ravenwing had found them. He should alert Hawthorne immediately. Instead, Pike carefully scuffed the tracks with his boot, obliterating them from view. He wasn't sure why he did it. Perhaps it was Bella's words cutting too close to truths he had denied for years. Perhaps it was the memory of his mother who had died believing her son would honor both sides of his heritage. Perhaps it was simply that for the first time he found himself questioning which side of this conflict was truly right. Whatever the reason, he had made a choice, a small one, but a choice nonetheless. Where it would lead, he couldn't say. Ravenwing observed the trading post as dawn light crept across the landscape. The night had revealed much the routines of the men inside the location, where Bella was held, the preparations for departure. Most importantly, it had revealed the inner conflict of Marshal Pike. Ravenwing had watched the young lawmen discover their tracks, then deliberately erase them. A man divided against himself, just as Maria had suggested. Now, as the marshals and traders prepared for the day's journey, Ravenwing gave the signal to begin. Swift Arrow and Broken Lance circled to the rear of the property, approaching the stables from downwind. The rest of the warriors took their positions, Grey Wolf to the north, Running Elk to the east, Bearclaw closest to the main entrance. Ravenwing himself moved toward the back of the building, nearest to where Bella was held. The sound of gunshots shattered the morning stillness, followed by the panicked neighing of horses. Swift Arrow and Broken Lance had initiated the distraction, firing into the air, and then setting fire to the hay stored beside the stable. The reaction was immediate. Men poured from the trading post, shouting in alarm. Hawthorne's voice rose above the others, barking orders to secure the horses and find the attackers. In the confusion, Ravenwing slipped to the back of the building. The window to Bella's room was small but large enough for communication. He peered inside and saw her standing, alert, chains glinting at her wrists. "Bella," he whispered urgently. She turned, eyes widening in recognition. "Ravenwing." "Stand back from the door," he instructed. "When the opportunity comes, be ready to run." "There are 7 of them," she warned. "And 6 of us," he replied with a grim smile. "The odds are nearly even." A shout from the front of the building drew his attention. The skirmish had begun in earnest. "Stay strong," he told her. "I will return for you." The trading post had erupted into chaos. 2 horses had broken free and galloped into the prairie. Jericho and one of his men gave chase while the others formed a defensive perimeter around the building. Hawthorne took command, positioning the remaining men at strategic points. Corcoran watched the north side. "Pike, secure the prisoner. The rest of you spread out and find those Indians." Pike moved toward the back room, his mind racing. This was the moment of decision. Which side would he choose? As he reached Bella's door, he heard movement behind him. Turning, he found himself face to face with Ravenwing. For a heartbeat, they stared at each other, hands hovering near their weapons. Then Pike made his choice. "She's inside," he said quietly, stepping aside. "Unharmed for now." Ravenwing studied him, surprise evident in his dark eyes. "Why?" "Because some wounds can only heal when we stop inflicting new ones." Pike answered, echoing words his mother had once spoken. "Go. Take her. I'll buy you time." Without waiting for a response, Pike moved back toward the main room, drawing his pistol. He would create a distraction, nothing too obvious, just enough to keep attention away from Bella's escape. Behind him, he heard the bolt slide open, followed by Bella's muffled cry of relief as she was reunited with Ravenwing. Some choices, Pike reflected, were worth whatever came after. Bella felt Ravenwing's arms encircle her, strong and certain. Despite the danger surrounding them, despite the shackles still binding her wrists, she allowed herself a moment of pure relief. "You came for me," she whispered against his chest. "Always," he replied, his voice a rumble beneath her ear. "But we must move quickly." He examined her shackles, then produced a small metal tool from his pouch. Within moments, the locks gave way, and the hateful bonds fell to the floor. "Pike helped us," Bella said, rubbing her raw wrists. "He let you in." "The Cherokee blood in him has awakened," Ravenwing observed, "but we cannot count on his protection for long." He led her to the window, assessing whether she could fit through the narrow opening. "Can you climb?" "Yes," Bella answered without hesitation. Before they could attempt the escape, gunfire erupted from the front of the building. The distraction was working, but it had also escalated the violence. "My warriors are outnumbered," Ravenwing said, his face taut with concern. "We need another way," Bella thought quickly. "The main room. There's a trap door to a cellar. I heard them mention it last night. If we can reach it, we might find another exit." It was a desperate plan, but the only one available. Ravenwing nodded, drawing a knife from his belt. "Stay behind me." They moved cautiously into the hallway. The sounds of battle echoed from outside, shouts, gunshots, the crash of breaking glass. Most of the fighting had moved to the perimeter of the property. As they approached the main room, Pike appeared from around a corner, his face tense. "Not that way," he warned. "Hawthorne's in there." "We need to reach the cellar," Bella explained. Pike hesitated, then nodded. "There's another entrance behind the bar. I'll distract Hawthorne. When you hear me call his name, move quickly." Ravenwing gripped Pike's shoulder, a warrior's acknowledgement. "Your mother's people would be proud." A shadow of emotion crossed Pike's face. Then he was gone, moving purposefully toward the main room. Moments later, they heard his voice. "Hawthorne, they're trying to circle around from the north. We need more men there." Bella and Ravenwing moved swiftly, staying low. The main room was dimly lit, dust motes dancing in shafts of morning light. Hawthorne stood with his back to them, peering out a window at the commotion outside. Pike had positioned himself to block any accidental view of their movement. They reached the bar, finding the small door Pike had mentioned hidden beneath a threadbare rug. Ravenwing lifted it silently, revealing a set of crude wooden steps descending into darkness. Bella went first, her torn wedding dress hampering her movements. Ravenwing followed, easing the trap door closed above them. The cellar smelled of damp earth and mold. Narrow shafts of light filtered through cracks in the floorboards above, providing just enough illumination to navigate. Wooden crates lined the walls, many bearing military marking supplies, diverted from government shipments, no doubt. "There," Bella whispered, pointing to a small door set into the earthen wall. "That must lead outside." They moved toward it, hope rising. Then the trapdoor above them crashed open. Light flooded the cellar. As Hawthorne descended the stairs, his pistol aimed directly at them. "Touching reunion," he said coldly. "But I'm afraid it ends here." Behind him came Corcoran, blood still staining his shirt where Bella had stabbed him. His eyes gleamed with malicious anticipation. "I told you they'd try for the cellar," he said to Hawthorne. "The half-breed Marshal is working with them." Hawthorne's expression hardened. "Pike, I should have known. A man who betrays his blood will betray his badge." "Straight to him." Ravenwing shifted subtly, placing himself between Bella and the Marshals. His hand moved toward the knife at his belt. "Don't," Hawthorne warned, cocking his pistol. "I'd prefer to deliver the woman alive, but dead will suffice if necessary." Above them, the sounds of fighting continued. Ravenwing's warriors were still engaged, unable to come to their aid. "The doctor will be disappointed to lose such a valuable specimen." Hawthorne continued, gesturing with his pistol for them to move away from the exit. "But I'm sure he'll find your corpse equally fascinating, Savage. A comparative study of degenerate anatomy." Bella felt rage boil within her. "The only degenerate here is you, Hawthorne. Trading in women, partnering with murderers like my father." "Business is business, Miss Thornwood," Hawthorne replied with a shrug. "Your father understands that. Progress requires certain accommodations." "Progress?" Ravenwing's voice was quiet but intense. "You call the slaughter of innocents progress, the selling of women progress?" "I call it the natural order," Hawthorne said. "The strong prosper, the weak submit. It's always been this way." "Not always," Ravenwing countered, "and not forever." Corcoran had grown impatient. Enough talk. Kill the Indian, Hawthorne. The woman won't try escaping with his blood on her hands. Hawthorne raised his pistol, aiming at Ravenwing's heart. Bella tensed, preparing to throw herself between them. The shot, when it came, was deafening in the confined space. But it was Corcoran who crumpled to the ground, a look of surprise frozen on his face. Behind him stood Pike, his pistol still smoking. "The natural order is changing," Pike said, his voice steady despite what he had just done. Hawthorne whirled, firing at Pike but missing as the younger man dove for cover behind a stack of crates. The bullet splintered wood, sending fragments flying. In the moment of distraction, Ravenwing lunged forward, tackling Hawthorne to the ground. The Marshal's pistol discharged again, the bullet burying itself in the earthen wall. The two men grappled in the dim light, each fighting with the knowledge that defeat meant death. Hawthorne was older, but powerfully built, with the hard-earned strength of a lifetime, enforcing his will upon others. Ravenwing was younger, quicker, driven by the accumulated rage of 15 years of injustice. Bella searched desperately for a weapon. Her eyes fell on a heavy wooden mallet atop one of the crates. She seized it, waiting for an opening to strike. Pike emerged from his cover, his own weapon, trained on the struggling men, unable to fire for fear of hitting Ravenwing. Hawthorne managed to slam Ravenwing against a support post, momentarily stunning him. He reached for a knife in his boot, raising it for a killing blow. Bella swung the mallet with all her strength, catching Hawthorne's arm with a sickening crack. He howled in pain, the knife clattering to the floor. Before he could recover, Pike was on him, pressing the barrel of his pistol to Hawthorne's temple. "It's over," Pike said quietly. Hawthorne's eyes burned with hatred. "You're dead, Pike. You know that, don't you? There's nowhere in this territory you can hide after this." "I'm not planning to hide," Pike replied. "I'm planning to expose everything, the trafficking, the asylum, all of it, including William Thornwood's involvement." "With what proof?" Hawthorne sneered. "Your word, the word of a race traitor." Pike smiled thinly. "With your ledger, the one you keep in your saddlebag. Every transaction, every name, every location. I've seen you writing in it." Hawthorne's face drained of color. Beside him, Corcoran lay motionless, blood pooling beneath his body. "Bind him," Ravenwing said to Pike. "We take him with us." Pike nodded, producing a length of rope from his coat. As he secured Hawthorne's hands, the Marshal's eyes locked with Bella's. "You'll regret this," Hawthorne hissed. "All of you. This territory belongs to men like me and your father. We built it. We rule it." "Not anymore," Bella replied, her voice steady. "Your kind of rule is ending." She turned to Ravenwing, who was examining the cellar exit. "Can we open it?" He nodded, shouldering against the small door. It resisted, then gave way with a groan of protesting wood. Beyond lay a short earthen tunnel leading up to the surface, some 20 yards from the trading post. "The horses first," Ravenwing decided. "Then we return for my warriors." The battle outside had reached a stalemate. Bear Claw and Grey Wolf had taken defensive positions behind an overturned wagon, exchanging fire with the remaining traders. Running Elk lay wounded, but alive in the tall grass, while Swift Arrow and Broken Lance had circled to the rear of the trading post, searching for another entry point. The odds had shifted with Corcoran's death and Hawthorne's capture, but the traders were well armed and desperate. They knew that surrender meant prison or worse. Emerging from the tunnel, Bella, Ravenwing, and Pike dragged the bound Hawthorne with them. They kept low, using the terrain for cover as they made their way to the stables. 2 horses remained, enough for Bella and the wounded Running Elk to escape while the warriors continued the fight. "I won't leave you," Bella insisted when Ravenwing explained the plan. "You must," he replied. "Get to safety. We will follow." Pike interjected. "There's another way." He gestured toward Hawthorne. "We use him." Understanding dawned on Ravenwing's face. He nodded, then hauled Hawthorne to his feet, pressing a knife to his throat. "Call them off," he ordered. "Tell them to lay down their weapons." Hawthorne's eyes narrowed. "And if I refuse, then you die here," Ravenwing said simply. "And we continue fighting, but many more will die needlessly." For a long moment, Hawthorne remained silent, calculating his options. Then with a resigned exhale, he nodded. "Jericho?" He called out, his voice carrying across the yard. "Stand down, all of you, stand down." The gunfire gradually ceased. Cautiously, the traders emerged from their positions. weapons still in hand but lowered. "Drop them," Hawthorne commanded. "It's over." One by one, the men laid their weapons on the ground. Bear Claw and the other warriors emerged from cover, arrows nocked, and ready should the surrender prove false. Pike stepped forward, his marshal's badge catching the morning light. "By the authority of the United States government, you're all under arrest for illegal trafficking, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice." It was a bluff. Pike had forfeited his authority the moment he turned against Hawthorne, but the traitors didn't know that. They submitted to being bound, their faces sullen with defeat. As the warriors secured the prisoners, Bella approached Pike. "What happens now?" "Now," Pike said, "we find proof of everything: the trafficking, the asylum, your father's involvement. Hawthorne's ledger is key. With it, we can bring this whole network down." "And you?" she asked. "What will happen to you?" Pike's expression turned solemn. "Best case, dismissed from service. Worst, charged as an accomplice for every crime I witnessed and ignored." He shrugged. "Either way, the badge is finished." "You chose the right side in the end," Bella said softly. "That counts for something." "Maybe," Pike replied. "Or maybe it's just the beginning of making amends." Etched. They found Hawthorne's ledger exactly where Pike had indicated, a small leather-bound book tucked in the marshal's saddlebag. Its pages contained damning evidence, names, dates, transactions. Women bought and sold under the guise of medical treatment. Government officials bribed to look the other way. And throughout, William Thornwood's name appeared repeatedly, both as investor and beneficiary. "This is enough to destroy him," Bella said, her voice hollow as she turned the pages. The father she had known, cold, controlling, but respected, was revealed as something far darker. Raven Wing stood beside her, his presence a silent comfort. "What will you do with this knowledge?" Bella closed the book, her decision already made. "Expose it all. Every name, every crime. No matter the cost." While Bear Claw and Grey Wolf guarded the prisoners, Swift Arrow and Broken Lance tended to Running Elk's wound. A bullet grazed across his thigh, painful, but not life-threatening. Pike had withdrawn slightly from the group, his position ambiguous, no longer a marshal, not quite an ally, caught between worlds, just as he had been his entire life. Bella approached him, the ledger clutched in her hands. "We need your help. To make this public, to ensure justice is served." Pike hesitated. "The justice you seek may not be possible. Men like your father, like Hawthorne, they have connections, influence. The system protects its own." "Then we change the system," Bella replied with quiet determination. "Starting here with this evidence." Something shifted in Pike's expression, respect perhaps, or the rekindling of principles long suppressed. "There's a newspaper editor in Fort Smith. Honest man, not afraid to print the truth. If we can get this ledger to him, then that's our next destination," Bella decided. Raven Wing joined them, his face troubled. "My people cannot go to Fort Smith. It would mean capture or death." The dilemma hung in the air between them. The evidence needed to reach civilization, but the warriors could not safely accompany them. "I'll go," Pike offered. "I know the editor. He'll listen to me." "Not alone," Bella insisted. "I need to be there. These are my father's crimes too." Raven Wing studied them both, then made his decision. "We will travel together as far as the Creek Nation lands. There our paths will divide. Pike and Bella will continue to Fort Smith with the ledger. The rest of us will return to our people." "And after?" Bella asked, her eyes fixed on Raven Wing. "What then?" "After," he said softly, "we find each other again, as we always do." They departed the trading post as noon approached, leaving the structures burning behind them. The prisoners, Hawthorne and the 3 remaining traitors, were bound and mounted on separate horses guarded closely by the warriors. They traveled east, keeping to less frequented trails, avoiding settlements and military outposts. The journey was tense, each mile bringing them closer to the division of their paths, and for Bella and Raven Wing, another separation. On the second night, they made camp in a sheltered ravine. With the prisoners secured, the group gathered around the small fire. For the first time since the rescue, there was a moment of relative peace. Pike sat slightly apart, cleaning his pistol with methodical precision. The weight of his choices pressed upon him: the death of Corcoran, the betrayal of his oath, the uncertain future that awaited. Bella approached, offering a cup of coffee. "You should join us." Pike accepted the cup but made no move to join the circle. "I don't belong there." "Neither do I," Bella pointed out. "Yet they've accepted me." "That's different. You're with him." Pike nodded toward Ravenwing, who was deep in conversation with Bearclaw. "And you saved us both," Bella reminded him. "That counts for something." Pike stared into his coffee, the firelight reflecting in the dark liquid. "My mother was Cherokee. My father was a white trader who abandoned her when he discovered she was pregnant." The confession came unexpectedly, as if a dam had broken within him. "She raised me in her village until I was 12. Then the fever took her." His voice grew distant with memory. "After there was no place for a half-blood orphan. The Cherokee were kind, but I was always apart. So I left, cut my hair, learned to speak without an accent, became more white than the whites." "And joined the Marshals," Bella finished. Pike nodded. "Became what I hated most. Enforced laws that hurt my mother's people. Told myself I was just following orders." "But you stopped," Bella said gently. "When it mattered most, you chose differently. One right choice doesn't erase years of wrong ones." "No," she agreed, "but it's a beginning." Across the fire, Ravenwing watched them talk, understanding passing between him and Bella without words. Then he rose, moving to join them. "Your choice took courage," he said to Pike. "Few men find such strength when tested." Pike looked up, surprise evident in his face. "It wasn't courage. It was waking up." Ravenwing nodded, as if this confirmed something he had suspected. "The hardest battles are fought within ourselves, between what we are told to be and what we truly are." For the first time since they'd met, Pike smiled, a small, uncertain expression, but genuine. "My mother used to say something similar." "Wise woman," Ravenwing remarked. "You honor her memory with your actions today." "Her career." The three fell into thoughtful silence, each contemplating the path that had brought them to this moment. Bella, the privileged daughter who had chosen love over security. Ravenwing, the Comanche warrior, seeking a new way forward for his people. Pike, the man divided against himself, finally finding clarity in crisis. Around them the night deepened. Stars emerged overhead, the same stars that had witnessed countless human struggles on the land below, the same stars that would watch over whatever came next. As dawn broke on the sixth day of travel, they reached the borders of Creek Nation territory. Here their paths would diverge, Pike and Bella continuing to Fort Smith with the evidence, Ravenwing and his warriors returning to their people with the prisoners. The moment of parting hung heavy between Bella and Ravenwing. They walked a short distance from the camp, seeking privacy for their goodbye. "I should go with you," Bella said, her voice thick with emotion. "Not yet," Ravenwing replied gently. "First we must ensure justice is done. The ledger must reach Fort Smith. And if it doesn't work, if my father's influence is too great, then we find another way," he said with quiet determination. "But this chance must not be wasted." Bella nodded, understanding the logic, even as her heart rebelled against another separation. "How will I find you after—" Ravenwing took her hands in his touch grounding her. "Follow the North Star for 7 days from Fort Smith. There is a valley near the sacred mountain where my people have gathered. Ask for Gray Willow's Lodge, my mother's sister. She will bring you to me." 7 days, Bella repeated, committing the directions to memory. "I'll be there." Ravenwing reached inside his shirt, producing a small pouch suspended on a leather cord. "This contains earth from my vision quest, where the ancestors spoke to me of our future." He placed it around her neck. "Let it remind you that some bonds cannot be broken even when bodies are apart." Bella touched the pouch, then removed her mother's pearl necklace. "Then take this, so a part of me remains with you." He accepted the gift with solemn reverence, understanding its significance. Then he drew her close, their foreheads touching, in an intimate gesture more profound than a kiss. "We must create a different life," he whispered, "or the blood will never stop flowing." "A different life," Bella echoed. "For us, for all who come after." When they returned to the camp, Pike had prepared the horses for their journey to Fort Smith. Hawthorne sat bound and sullen, his defeat evident in the slump of his shoulders. Bearclaw approached, extending his hand to Bella, in the white man's custom he had learned long ago. You have courage, Bella Thornwood. May it serve you well on the path ahead. Thank you for helping save me, she replied, clasping his weathered hand. I did not do it for you, Bearclaw said honestly. I did it for him. He nodded toward Ravenwing. But now I think perhaps it was the right choice for us all. The final goodbyes were brief, pragmatic. Plans were confirmed, directions verified. Pike and Bella would take Hawthorne's ledger to Fort Smith, while Ravenwing's warriors would deliver the prisoners to a territorial judge known for his fairness, a man Pike had recommended, one of the few who might ensure proper justice. As Bella mounted her horse, her gaze locked with Ravenwing's one final time. No words were necessary. They had found each other against impossible odds once before. They would do so again. She turned her horse toward Fort Smith, Pike beside her, the future uncertain but the path clear. Behind her, Ravenwing watched until she disappeared over the horizon, the pearl necklace clutched in his hand like a talisman against the coming days. The journey to Fort Smith took 3 days. They traveled quickly, avoiding main roads or where that word of Hawthorne's capture would have spread. William Thornwood would have men searching for his daughter, and the authorities would be hunting Pike as a deserter and traitor. They spoke little during the journey, each lost in their own thoughts. Pike grappled with the magnitude of his choices, the shedding of his false identity, the uncertain future that awaited. Bella rehearsed what she would tell the newspaper editor, how she would frame the evidence to ensure it couldn't be ignored or suppressed. Fort Smith appeared on the horizon late on the 3rd day, a sprawling frontier town straddling the boundary between civilization and wilderness. Smoke rose from chimneys, church spires punctuated the skyline, and the American flag flew over the military garrison at the town's edge. We can't simply ride in, Pike said, reining his horse to a stop on a ridge overlooking the settlement. They'll be watching for us. Then how do we reach your editor friend? Bella asked. Pike considered their options. There's a small printing shop on the eastern edge of town. The Arkansas Truth, it's called. Not the main newspaper, a smaller operation, but influential among certain circles. The editor, Micah Sullivan, was once a friend of my mother's people. Will he help us? If we can reach him, Pike replied. We'll wait for nightfall, then approach from the riverside. Less chance of being seen. As darkness fell, they left their horses concealed in a thicket and proceeded on foot. The town was quieter now, most establishments closed, save for the saloons and brothels that serviced the transient population of cowboys, traders, and soldiers. They moved through back alleys, Pike leading with the confidence of one who had visited the town many times in his martial duties. The printing shop was dark when they reached it, but a light burned in the apartment above. Wait here, Pike instructed, leaving Bella in the shadows while he approached the back door. He knocked in a specific pattern, 3 quick taps, a pause, then 2 more. After a long moment, a voice called down, "Who's there?" "Someone who remembers when the creek taught the settlers how to survive their first winter," Pike answered. It was clearly a code, for the voice responded immediately. "And what did they learn?" "That wisdom comes from unexpected sources," Pike completed. A match flared in an upstairs window as someone lit a lamp. Minutes later, the back door opened to reveal a thin man with spectacles and ink-stained fingers. "Pike," he asked, squinting into the darkness. "What in God's name?" "I need your help, Sullivan," Pike interrupted. "It's urgent, and I'm not alone." He motioned for Bella to join them. Sullivan's eyes widened at the sight of her torn wedding dress, now filthy from days of travel. "Inside quickly," he urged, ushering them through the door. "Before someone sees you." The printing shop smelled of ink and paper, its interior crowded with presses and typesetting equipment. Sullivan led them up a narrow staircase to his living quarters, a sparse apartment with books stacked on every surface. "You're in trouble," Sullivan observed, gesturing for them to sit. "Both of you." "Yes," Pike acknowledged, "but we bring something worth the risk." Bella produced Hawthorne's ledger from inside her dress. Evidence of corruption, trafficking, and murder involving some of the most powerful men in the territory. Sullivan's eyebrows rose as he accepted the book. "Including William Thornwood," Bella said steadily. "My father." Sullivan's eyes flicked between her and the ledger. "You're Thornwood's daughter, the one who disappeared from her own wedding. The one who was abducted and nearly sold to an asylum," Bella corrected, "by federal marshals working with my father." Sullivan opened the ledger, scanning its contents with growing alarm. This is extensive. Names, dates, transactions. Government officials, businessmen, doctors. He looked up. Publishing this would be dangerous, very dangerous. But you'll do it, Pike pressed. Sullivan removed his spectacles, polishing them with a handkerchief as he considered. My paper exists to print the truth, however uncomfortable. But you should understand the consequences. These men will not simply surrender their power. They will fight back, discredit you, possibly worse. We understand the risks, Bella said, but this must be exposed. Too many have suffered already. Sullivan nodded slowly, his decision made. I'll need time to verify some of these details, prepare the story properly. A week, perhaps. We don't have a week, Pike objected. Every day increases the chance we're discovered. 3 days, then, Sullivan compromised. But you can't stay here. It's too obvious, too connected to me. Where then? Bella asked. Sullivan thought for a moment. There's a widow who lives on the outskirts of town, Martha Gentry. She helps certain travelers who need discretion. Creek Cherokee, runaway slaves heading north. I'll take you there tonight. As Sullivan gathered some essentials for them, Bella turned to Pike. 3 days. Then we can head north to find Ravenwing. Pike's expression was guarded. You still include me in your plans. Of course, Bella replied. You're part of this now. Unless you have other intentions? Pike looked away, his profile sharp in the lamplight. I've been running from who I am for so long, I'm not sure I know how to stop. Then learn, Bella said simply, as we all must. Widow Gentry's cabin stood in a clearing surrounded by ancient oaks. It was a modest structure, but well-maintained, with a vegetable garden and a small stable. The widow herself was a striking figure, tall, straight-backed despite her 60 years, with silver hair pulled into a severe bun and eyes that seemed to look through rather than at a person. So you're the ones causing all the commotion, she said after Sullivan had explained their situation. Been a while since I sheltered a federal marshal. First time sheltering one who's turned against his own. Former marshal, Pike corrected. The widow responded non-committally. Well, you're welcome here long as you help with chores and keep your heads down. Got a root cellar that's hidden folks before you. If trouble comes, that's where you'll go. For 3 days, they lived in a strange limbo. During daylight hours, they helped the widow with her garden-chopped wood, repaired a leaking roof. At night, they plotted their journey north, tracing routes on a faded map Sullivan had provided. On the evening of the second day, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Bella found herself studying Pike. Something had changed in him since their escape, a softening around the eyes, a loosening of the rigid posture he had maintained as a marshal. What will you do, she asked, after this is published, after we reach Ravenwing's people? Pike considered the question. I don't know. I can't go back to the Marshals, can't return to the Cherokee. Too much time has passed, too many bridges burned. You could forge a new path, Bella suggested, like Ravenwing speaks of. Not Cherokee, not white, but something different. A bridge between worlds. A smile flickered across Pike's face. My mother called me that once. A bridge. He shook his head. Never felt like one. More like a man stranded in the middle, belonging nowhere. Perhaps belonging nowhere means you can belong anywhere, Bella offered. Create something new rather than fit into something old. Before Pike could respond, the sound of approaching horses cut through the twilight. Multiple riders moving fast. Widow Gentry appeared in the doorway, her expression grave. Inside. Now. They followed her into the cabin, where she moved a rug to reveal a trap door. Down there. Quick and quiet. The root cellar was cool and dark, smelling of earth and stored vegetables. A small lantern provided minimal light as they huddled beneath the floor of the cabin. Above them, boots thumped on the porch. A sharp knock, then a man's voice, authoritative official. Mrs. Gentry, Lieutenant Foster, Fort Smith Garrison. We're searching for fugitives. A woman and a man traveling together. Just me here, Lieutenant, came the widow's steady reply. As it's been since my Henry passed 8 years ago. Mind if we look around? Got a warrant? A pause. No, ma'am. But these fugitives are dangerous. The man's wanted for murdering a federal marshal. The woman's been abducted, possibly harmed. That's so, Widow Gentry's voice remained unperturbed. Well, without a warrant, I'm afraid my hospitality extends only to the porch. Good evening, Lieutenant. The door closed with finality. For tense minutes, they listened to boots circling the cabin, checking the stable moving through the garden. Then the sounds receded, hoofbeats fading into the distance. They'll be back, Pike whispered, with a warrant next time. Bella nodded, her resolve hardening. Then we need to be gone before they return, and Sullivan needs to publish that story immediately. When the widow opened the trap door an hour later, her face was grim. They're posting men on the roads. Word is your father's offering a substantial reward for your return, girl, and you former marshal are described as a dangerous kidnapper and murderer. We need to get word to Sullivan, Bella said. The story has to be published tomorrow, not the next day. The widow considered this. I can send my boy. He's quick, knows how to avoid being seen. Tell Sullivan to focus on the ledger details, Pike instructed. Names, dates, transactions. The personal story, mine and Bella's, can wait. The evidence is what matters. As the widow left to find her son, an orphaned Creek boy she had taken in years earlier, Bella and Pike began preparations for their departure. They would leave at first light, avoiding roads traveling cross-country toward the Comanche territory where Ravenwing awaited. Will it be enough? Bella asked as they packed provisions. The ledger, the newspaper story. Will it truly bring my father and the others to justice? Pike considered her question seriously. Justice has many forms. The legal kind. Perhaps not. Men like your father have influence connections. They can evade conventional justice. Then what was the point of all this? Bella gestured to the cellar, their fugitive status, the dangers they had faced. The point, Pike said quietly, is truth. Once spoken, it cannot be unheard. It changes things not all at once, but gradually, inevitably, like water wearing away stone. Bella thought of Ravenwing's vision, a future where their child bridged divided worlds, of his words about creating a different life, one not built on bloodshed and domination. Then we continue north, she decided. Whatever comes, we face it together. Outside, the night deepened over the prairie. Stars emerged one by one, including the North Star that would guide them toward Ravenwing and whatever future awaited. In 3 days' time, Sullivan's newspaper would release its explosive findings, sending shockwaves through the territory's power structure. Whether justice would follow remained uncertain, but some journeys once begun carry their own momentum, and some truths once glimpsed cannot be unseen. As Bella prepared for the journey ahead, she felt a strange peace settle within her, not the peace of resolution, but of purpose. The road forward was fraught with danger, but for the first time in her life, it was a road she had chosen freely. And that perhaps was the beginning of healing for her, for Pike, for Ravenwing, and for the wounded land they all called home. Dawn broke in ribbons of gold and crimson across the eastern sky as Bella and Pike slipped away from Widow Gentry's cabin. They traveled on foot, leading their horses through dense underbrush to avoid the roads where soldiers patrolled. The widow had provided them with simple, practical clothing, rough cotton shirts, sturdy trousers, wide-brimmed hats to shield their faces from both sun and recognition. Gone was Bella's tattered wedding dress, that symbol of captivity and enforced destiny. In its place, she wore the garb of a common traveler, anonymous and free. The transformation felt right, as if she were shedding not just clothing, but the confinements of her former life. Head north toward the river, Pike instructed as they reached a small clearing. We'll follow it upstream for 2 days, then cut northwest toward Comanche territory. Bella nodded, orienting herself by the rising sun. The lessons of the past weeks had changed her, honed her. No longer the sheltered daughter of privilege, she moved with newfound awareness of the land, reading its signs and rhythms, as Ravenwing had taught her. What if Sullivan fails? She asked as they mounted their horses, the immediate danger of discovery now past. What if the story isn't published? Pike adjusted his hat, his expression resolute. Then we find another way. The truth doesn't depend on one man or one newspaper. They rode in companionable silence, each lost in private thoughts. Bella's mind drifted to Ravenwing, to the vision he had described, to the future they might build together if they survived the present dangers. Pike contemplated his own uncertain path, the identity he was still discovering after years of denial. By midday, they had put considerable distance between themselves and Fort Smith. They stopped to rest near a small stream, allowing the horses to drink, while they ate a sparse meal of jerky and cornbread provided by the widow. "Tell me about the Comanche," Bella said, breaking the silence. "What should I expect when we reach them?" Pike considered the question, weighing his limited knowledge against potential misconceptions. "They're proud, disciplined, suspicious of outsiders with good reason, but they respect courage and honesty." He paused. "They won't make it easy for you at first. Being white, being a woman, being Thornwood's daughter." "I don't expect easy," Bella replied. "I expect real." Pike nodded, a new respect evident in his eyes. "Ravenwing is unusual among his people. Educated in white schools, but still deeply Comanche. He walks between worlds looking for a path forward that preserves what matters while adapting to survive." "Like you," Bella observed. Pike looked away, uncomfortable with the comparison. "No, I ran from one world to hide in another. He faces both, embraces both." Before Bella could respond, the distant sound of hoofbeats reached them. They froze, listening intently. At least 3 riders moving fast, approaching from the south. "Soldiers," Pike said grimly. "They've picked up our trail." They mounted quickly, abandoning the rest of their meal. Pike led them into a densely wooded area, where the trees grew close enough to impede horseback pursuit. They rode hard branches, whipping past their faces, the sounds of pursuit growing fainter behind them. By nightfall, they had shaken their pursuers, but at a cost. Pike's horse had thrown a shoe, forcing them to continue with both of them riding Bella's mount. It slowed their progress significantly. "We need to find a settlement," Pike said as they made camp in a sheltered ravine. "Somewhere to get another horse." "Is that wise?" Bella questioned. "Every town will have notices about us by now." "Not every settlement is a town," Pike replied. "There's a Cherokee trading post 2 days north of here. Small, isolated. The kind of place that doesn't ask questions and doesn't answer them when officials come calling." Bella studied his face in the fading light. "Your mother's people." Pike's expression tightened. "Not mine. Not anymore. Yet you know where they are. You've kept track of them." He didn't answer, but his silence was confirmation enough. They reached the Cherokee trading post as dusk was falling 2 days later. It was little more than a collection of log structures nestled in a valley between rolling hills, a general store, a blacksmith, a few scattered cabins. Smoke rose from stone chimneys, carrying the scent of cooking fires into the evening air. Pike had grown increasingly tense as they approached. His posture was rigid, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings, as if expecting danger or perhaps recognition. "Wait here," he instructed Bella, leaving her with the horse at the edge of the settlement. "I'll see if I can arrange for a mount without drawing attention." Bella watched him walk toward the general store, noting how he subtly adjusted his gait, his posture slipping into the role of an ordinary traveler, rather than a former lawman or a man of mixed heritage. It was a skill born of years of hiding, of careful self-preservation. As darkness descended, lamps were lit in the cabins. From one came the sound of a fiddle, a mournful tune that floated on the night air. Bella found herself drawn to it, a momentary balm for the constant tension of their journey. She was still listening when Pike returned, accompanied by an elderly Cherokee man. His face was deeply lined, his black hair streaked with silver, his eyes sharp and assessing as they took in Bella's appearance. "This is Sequoia," Pike introduced him. "He has a horse we can buy." The old man studied Bella with undisguised curiosity. "You are running from something," he said, his English accented but clear, "or toward something." "Both," Bella answered honestly. Sequoia nodded, seemingly satisfied with her response. "Come, you will stay tonight. Continue tomorrow." Pike began to object, but Sequoia raised a hand. "Soldiers passed through yesterday, looking for a man and woman. Better to travel when they are not expecting it." They followed him to a small cabin set apart from the others. Inside was sparse but clean, a table, chairs, a hearth with a cooking fire, sleeping pallets along one wall. A woman was preparing a meal, her movements efficient and graceful despite her advanced years. "My wife Ayita," Sequoia introduced her. "She remembers you, Thomas." Pike froze at the use of his birth name. "I go by Pike now." "Here you are, Thomas," Sequoia replied simply. "The name your mother gave you." Ayita approached, studying Pike's face with gentle scrutiny. "You have her eyes," she said softly. "Strong eyes that see far." Discomfort radiated from Pike in almost palpable waves. Bella watched as he struggled between the instinct to flee and the pull of connection to a past he had long denied. Sit, Aita instructed, gesturing to the table. Eat, then we talk. The meal was simple but nourishing: cornbread, beans, dried fruit. They ate in silence, the only sound the crackling of the fire and the distant fiddle music. When they had finished, Sequoia filled pipes with tobacco, offering one to Pike, who accepted with evident reluctance. The soldiers search for you, Sequoia said, lighting his pipe. They say you killed a marshal, stole a white woman. I killed a corrupt man who trafficked women, Pike corrected, and she is here by choice. Sequoia's gaze shifted to Bella. Why does a white woman run with a Cherokee man to Comanche territory? Bella met his eyes steadily. Because I love a Comanche man. Because I've seen the evil my father and men like him have done. Because I want a different future than the one they planned for me. Love, Aida said the word carrying both warmth and warning. A dangerous reason to journey so far. Worth the danger, Bella replied. Sequoia studied Pike's smoke curling around his weathered face. And you, Thomas, why do you risk your life for this? Pike stared into the fire, choosing his words carefully. I spent years denying what I am, following orders that hurt my mother's people, that hurt many people. This, he gestured between himself and Bella. This is the beginning of making things right. Or the end, Sequoia observed without judgment. The soldiers will not stop hunting you. We have evidence, Bella explained. A ledger documenting crimes by powerful men, including my father. It's being published in Fort Smith as we speak. Paper burns, Sequoia replied. Power remains. Not always, Pike countered. Sometimes truth is enough to crack the foundations. Sequoia nodded, conceding the point. You will need more than a horse for your journey. The way to Comanche land is long, and the soldiers patrol the territories between. We'll manage, Pike said. You will die, Sequoia stated flatly, unless you have help. He exchanged a look with his wife, some unspoken communication passing between them. Aida nodded once, then rose and left the cabin. My grandson Siskwa will guide you, Sequoia announced. He knows paths the white soldiers never find. He can take you as far as the boundary of Comanche territory. Pike seemed about to refuse, then reconsidered. Why would you help us? I abandoned our people, denied my heritage. You are still your mother's son, Sequoia said simply, and some journeys are worth helping, even when the traveler does not yet know his destination. They departed the next morning, guided by Siskwa, a young Cherokee man of few words but evident skill. He led them along game trails and dry creek beds, through stands of timber where the canopy was thick enough to hide them from searching eyes. Pike was subdued, following their night in the Cherokee settlement, as if the encounter had stirred memories and questions long suppressed. Bella gave him space, understanding that some reckonings needed solitude. On their third day with Siskwa, they encountered their first sign of Ravenwing's people, a small hunting party returning with fresh game. The Comanche warriors regarded them warily, especially Bella with her fair skin, and Pike with his marshal's bearing. Siskwa spoke to them in broken Comanche, explaining their purpose. One of the warriors, a young man with sharp eyes and a skeptical expression, stepped forward. I am Swift Arrow. He introduced himself in careful English. Ravenwing sent me to watch for you. We did not expect you so soon. Relief washed through Bella. Is he well? Are the others safe? Swift Arrow nodded. They await you at the summer camp, but there is much happening. White soldiers search the territories, asking questions, making threats. Because of us, Pike acknowledged. Because of truth, Swift Arrow countered. The paper in the white town has published stories about the bad men, about women sold like horses, about Thornwood's evil. Bella felt a surge of hope. Sullivan published the ledger. Yes, now the white authorities fight among themselves. Some want justice, others want silence. Swift Arrow gestured to the north. Come, Ravenwing waits. They bid farewell to Siskwa, who would return to his grandparents with news of their safe passage. The young Cherokee and Pike exchanged a long-look acknowledgement between men whose lives had been shaped by the same forces, who had chosen different paths in response. Your mother's spirit walks with you, Thomas, Siskwa said quietly. Even when you do not hear her. Pike nodded, unable to find words. Then they parted Siskwa, heading east, while they followed Swift Arrow north toward the summer camp and Ravenwing. The Comanche summer camp sprawled across a verdant valley nestled between rolling hills. Teepees stood in circular formations, smoke rising from cooking fires. Children played among the dwellings, women worked at tanning hides or preparing food, and men tended to horses in nearby corrals. As Bella, Pike, and Swift Arrow approached, activity slowed, then stopped. All eyes turned toward them, the white woman, the mixed-blood lawmen, and their Comanche escort. From the largest teepee emerged a familiar figure, tall, broad-shouldered, his face brightening at the sight of Bella. Ravenwing moved toward them with purposeful strides, his joy at their arrival evident despite the gravity of their situation. Behind him came Bear Claw, Grey Wolf, and the other warriors who had helped rescue Bella. Their expressions ranged from cautious welcome to outright suspicion. Ravenwing reached them, taking Bella's hands in his. "You made it," he said simply, his voice warm with relief. "Sullivan published the ledger," she told him. "The truth is out." "And the consequences have already begun," Ravenwing replied. "White soldiers have been to our previous camp asking questions, making demands. We moved here 3 days ago." Bella felt a stab of guilt. "We've brought trouble to your people." "Trouble was already here." Bear Claw interjected, his weathered face stern. "Has been since the first white man set foot on these lands." Ravenwing turned to Pike, extending his hand in the white man's custom. "You brought her safely. My gratitude is yours." Pike accepted the handshake. It was the right thing to do. Around them, the camp had begun to stir again, though many still watched the newcomers with wary interest. Children peeked from behind their mothers' skirts, pointing and whispering at Bella's fair skin and strange clothing. "Come," Ravenwing said. "You must be tired from your journey. We will eat, then talk of what comes next." He led them to his teepee, where Maria, the Mexican housekeeper from Thornwood Estate, waited with evident relief. "Maria," Bella exclaimed in surprise, "how are you here?" The older woman embraced her warmly. "After you were taken, your father became dangerous, blamed me for helping you meet with Ravenwing. I fled before he could do worse than threats. I sent warriors to bring her here," Ravenwing explained. "She has been teaching our women new medicines, new ways of preparing food, and teaching me more English words." He smiled at Maria with genuine affection. Inside the teepee, they shared a meal of fresh venison and wild roots. As they ate, Ravenwing explained how they had delivered Hawthorne and the other prisoners to a territorial judge, as planned, only to learn days later that the men had been released on technical grounds. "The white man's justice has many holes through which the guilty can escape," Bear Claw observed bitterly. "But the newspaper stories have caused much trouble for these men," Maria added. "Many are asking questions now that cannot be easily answered." Pike nodded. "That's how it starts. Questions lead to more questions. Eventually the truth becomes impossible to bury. And your father," Ravenwing said to Bella, his tone gentle but direct. "There is news of him as well." Bella steeled herself. "Tell me." "He denies everything, claims the ledger is a forgery, that you were kidnapped and brainwashed by savages." Ravenwing's mouth twisted around the words savages. "But others in your father's circle have begun to distance themselves. Some have disappeared rather than face questioning." "He'll never admit what he's done," Bella said, a heaviness settling in her chest. "He'll fight to his last breath to preserve his power, his reputation." "Then he will fight alone," Ravenwing replied, "which makes him both more desperate and more dangerous." The implications hung in the air between them. William Thornwood was wounded, but not defeated, and wounded predators were often the most vicious. "What now?" Pike asked, voicing the question on all their minds. "We can't stay here forever. Eventually they'll find this camp too." Ravenwing nodded, having clearly considered this reality. "No, we must find a new way. Not running, not hiding, but building something that cannot be easily destroyed." He turned to Bella, his expression both tender and resolute. "I have spoken with the elders. Many are resistant to change, to new ideas. But enough can see that our old ways alone cannot protect us in this changing world." "What are you proposing?" Bella asked. "A new kind of settlement. Not purely Comanche, not white, but a place where different peoples can live together, learn from each other, a community built on respect rather than domination. The audacity of the vision struck Bella with its simple power. Not assimilation, not separation, but coexistence. A third path. Where? Pike asked practically. The government controls most land now. Reservations are closely monitored. There is a valley 3 days' ride from here, Ravenwing explained, hidden in the mountains difficult to access. Good water, fertile soil, game in abundance. Few white men know of its existence. A sanctuary, Bella murmured. A beginning, Ravenwing corrected gently. Small at first. Our people, those who choose to come. Others who seek a different way. Cherokee who resist the reservation. Mexicans pushed from their lands, even whites who see the injustice of current ways. Pike looked skeptical. The army won't simply allow a mixed settlement to exist outside their control. Not if they find it, Bearclaw said with a sly smile. But these mountains hold many secrets, and we are good at keeping them. The conversation continued late into the night, plans taking shape, possibilities emerging. Not everyone was convinced. Bearclaw remained cautious, worried about trusting outsiders after generations of betrayal, but the seed had been planted, the vision articulated. As the others retired to sleep, Bella and Ravenwing stepped outside, seeking a moment of privacy beneath the star-strewn sky. He took her hands in his, the touch of bridge across worlds. "Are you certain this is the life you want?" he asked. "It will not be easy, not comfortable like the life you knew." Bella thought of the Thornwood estate, with its polished floors and the stifling conformity, of her father's cold control of society's rigid expectations. "I've never been more certain of anything," she replied. "This is not just about us now. It's about what comes after the world we help create." Ravenwing touched the pouch containing sacred earth that still hung around her neck. "During my vision quest, I saw a child. Our child. Neither white nor Comanche, but both. A bridge between worlds." Bella's hand went instinctively to her stomach. "A new beginning." He nodded, understanding her meaning immediately. His eyes widened with wonder. "You are certain?" 2 months, I think, since just before the wedding." Ravenwing placed his palm gently against her abdomen, where new life was forming, life that embodied the future they envisioned. In that moment, their personal journey merged with something larger, a vision not just for themselves, but for generations to come. The next morning brought a flurry of activity to the camp. Word had spread of Ravenwing's plan for a new settlement, generating both excitement and concern among the tribe. Some, particularly the younger members, saw the wisdom in adaptation, in finding new ways to preserve what mattered most about their culture. Others, especially the elders, feared further loss of tradition, further erosion of identity. Bella observed these discussions with respectful attention, learning the rhythms and protocols of Comanche decision-making. Unlike her father's autocratic style here, decisions emerged through extended dialogue, through the weighing of many voices. Pike, too, found himself drawn into the process. His knowledge of white settlements, of government procedures, proved valuable as they considered practical challenges. Gradually, his discomfort among the Comanche eased, replaced by a growing sense of purpose. "You know," Grey Wolf said to him as they surveyed a map of the territories, "among Cherokee, a man can be adopted into the tribe, become one of the people regardless of blood." Pike looked up, startled by the implication. "I'm not looking to be adopted by anyone." Grey Wolf shrugged. "Just saying, a man need not be trapped between worlds. He can choose one or create his own." The words lingered with Pike throughout the day as preparations continued. Horses were selected for the journey to the hidden valley. Supplies were gathered, routes discussed, scouts dispatched to ensure the path was clear. Bella, meanwhile, found herself welcomed into the daily life of the camp. Maria had paved the way, teaching her basic Comanche phrases and explaining customs. The women, initially wary, gradually accepted her presence as she worked alongside them, eager to learn their skills. A young woman named Running Fawn took particular interest in teaching Bella. "Ravenwing says, you will be the mother of a new kind of future," she explained as she demonstrated how to prepare a specific medicinal herb. Such a mother should know both white and Comanche healing ways. Bella absorbed these lessons eagerly, recognizing their practical value and deeper significance. Each skill she acquired was a thread connecting her to this community, weaving her into its fabric. In the evening, as the camp gathered around communal fires, Pike sought out Bella. His expression was thoughtful, resolved. "I've been thinking," he said, watching the flames dance, "about what comes next." "And," Bella prompted, "I don't belong with the Cherokee anymore. Too much time has passed, too many choices made." He paused. "But I don't belong in the white world either. Not after everything that's happened." "Where then?" Pike nodded toward where Ravenwing was deep in conversation with several warriors. "Maybe here. Not as Comanche, I don't fool myself about that. But as something else. Someone who can help bridge the gap when needed." Bella smiled, recognizing the significance of his decision. "A teacher, perhaps. The children of this new settlement will need to understand both worlds." Pike considered the concept clearly appealing. "Maybe. Teach them English reading writing, but also the truth about our shared history, not just the white version." "That sounds like a worthy path," Bella said warmly. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion at the edge of the camp. A scout had returned riding hard, his expression urgent. Warriors gathered quickly as he delivered his news. Raven Wing found Bella and Pike moments later, his face grave. "Soldiers," he explained. "A full company moving this way. They've been to the previous camp, found signs of our passage." "How soon?" Pike asked. "2 days. Maybe less." Bella felt a cold knot of fear form in her stomach. "My father?" "Yes. The scout says he rides with them, guiding their search." The news rippled through the camp, catalyzing immediate action. What had been methodical preparation became urgent necessity. The journey to the hidden valley, planned for several days hence, would now begin at first light. Through the night, the camp dismantled itself with practiced efficiency. Teepees came down, possessions were packed, horses readied. Children were kept close, their usual play suspended in the somber atmosphere of impending departure. Bella helped where she could, following Maria's guidance. As she worked, a growing resolve replaced her initial fear. Her father's pursuit felt like the dying gasp of an old order, desperate to maintain control in the face of inevitable change. Dawn found the camp transformed. Where teepees had stood were now only circles of bare earth. Loaded horses stood ready, women and children, mounted warriors positioned as escorts and guards. The tribe would travel in extended formation, not bunched together as an easy target, but spread out across the landscape, while maintaining communication through signals and scouts. Raven Wing approached Bella as she secured her few possessions to her horse. "You should ride in the center with the mothers and children. Safest there." She shook her head. "I'll ride with you. If we encounter soldiers, I want them to see me, to see that I'm here by choice, not coercion." He studied her face, recognizing the determination there. "Very well, but stay close." Pike joined them, armed now with a rifle provided by Bear Claw, a gesture of growing trust. "I've been thinking about your father," he said to Bella. "Why pursue so aggressively? The ledger is published, the damage to his reputation done." "Because I'm the one thing he can't control," Bella replied. "As long as I'm free speaking the truth about him, his power is threatened. And control is everything to William Thornwood." Ravenwing nodded grimly. "And perhaps because he knows what else you might reveal." "What do you mean?" Bella asked. "The massacre 15 years ago, my father's death. There were no official records, no accountability. Your testimony could change that." The realization settled over Bella. Her father wasn't just protecting his business interests or social standing. He was avoiding potential prosecution for mass murder. "All the more reason to reach the valley safely," she said, "to preserve the truth until it can be fully told." They traveled northwest, leaving the familiar prairie for increasingly rugged terrain. The first day passed without incident, the tribe moving like a living organism across the landscape, scouts ranging ahead, and to the sides, warriors guarding the flanks, families and elders in the protected center. Bella rode beside Raven Wing at the head of the main group, Pike slightly behind them. The journey was physically demanding, especially given her pregnancy, but she welcomed the challenge. Each mile put distance between them and her father's influence, bringing them closer to the possibility of a new beginning. On the second day, as they began to enter the foothills of the mountains, a scout returned with alarming news. A second company of soldiers had been deployed from the north, creating a potential pincer movement to trap the tribe between converging forces. "They're more determined than I expected," Pike observed as the leaders gathered to reassess their route. "This isn't a standard pursuit anymore. It's a military operation." Bear Claw's weathered face was grim. "They want to make an example of us. Comanche who defy the reservation system, who harbor white fugitives. We need to split up," Ravenwing decided after studying the crude map sketched in the dirt. "The main group will continue toward the valley by the eastern approach. A smaller band will create a diversion, drawing the soldiers west." "A dangerous task," Grey Wolf noted. "Those who create this diversion may not escape." "I will lead it," Ravenwing said without hesitation. "With volunteers only." "No," Bella protested immediately. "There must be another way." Ravenwing took her hands, his expression gentle but resolved. "The many must reach safety. A few must risk themselves for that to happen." Bear Claw stepped forward. "I will go with you. These old bones have seen enough years." Swift Arrow and 3 other young warriors volunteered as well, their faces solemn with the understanding of what they were undertaking. "I'm coming too," Pike said, surprising them all. "I know how soldiers think how they track. I can help make the diversion more convincing." Bella looked from Pike to Ravenwing, anguish evident in her expression. "Then I'm coming as well." "No," Ravenwing said firmly. "You carry our future within you. You must reach the valley safely." "He's right," Pike added. "This isn't just about us anymore." The logic was undeniable, but acceptance came hard. The thought of separation of Ravenwing, facing danger without her, tore at Bella's heart. Yet she understood the necessity, the greater purpose they served. The tribe would continue under Grey Wolf's leadership, following the eastern route to the Hidden Valley. The diversionary group Ravenwing Bear Claw, Pike Swift Arrow, and 3 others would create a trail leading west toward a box canyon where they could potentially evade pursuit while drawing the soldiers away from the main group. As final preparations were made, Bella and Ravenwing sought a moment alone. Words seemed inadequate for the moment, the possibility of permanent separation hovering between them. "I will find you," Ravenwing promised, echoing words spoken in the church so many weeks ago. "No matter what happens, I will find my way to you and our child." Bella clutched the pouch of sacred earth that hung around her neck. "And I'll be waiting, in the valley building what we've dreamed of." Their goodbye was brief but profound, a kiss that carried the weight of shared dreams, of promises that transcended the immediate danger. Then they parted, each turning toward their appointed path. Bella watched as the diversionary group rode west, Ravenwing's figure growing smaller against the vast landscape. She committed the image to memory, his straight back, his proud profile, the eagle feather in his hair, catching the sunlight. Then she turned her horse eastward, joining the main tribe as they continued their journey toward the Hidden Valley and whatever future awaited them there. The valley revealed itself 3 days later, after a grueling ascent through narrow mountain passes. It spread before them like a vision from legend, a broad expanse of fertile land nestled between protective peaks, with a clear river winding through its center. Ancient trees provided shade, and shelter meadows offered grazing for horses, and the secluded nature of the place promised a degree of safety from outside intrusion. Grey Wolf halted the procession at the valley's entrance, allowing everyone to absorb the sight. For many, especially the elders leaving the traditional hunting grounds for this mountain refuge, represented a profound transition, an acknowledgement that survival required adaptation. "This is the place of Ravenwing's vision," Grey Wolf announced. "Here we will build not just a camp, but a future." The tribe moved forward, entering the valley with a mixture of trepidation and hope. For 3 generations, they had lived as nomads on the prairie, following the buffalo, evading enemies. This shift to a more settled existence represented both opportunity and challenge. Bella felt the significance deeply as she rode into the valley alongside Maria. This place would be home to her child, the beginning of the bridge between worlds that Ravenwing had foreseen. "It's beautiful," Maria observed, her weathered face softening with appreciation. "Like the valleys of my grandmother's stories in Mexico, a place where different seeds can grow together." The tribe established a temporary camp by the river, everyone contributing to the work of creating shelter, securing food, exploring the immediate surroundings. Bella threw herself into these tasks, keeping busy to ward off worry about Ravenwing and the others. 5 days passed with no word from the diversionary group. Then, as dusk was falling on the 6th day, a lone figure appeared at the valley's entrance, a man on foot moving with evident exhaustion. Bella was helping prepare the evening meal when the alarm spread through the camp. She looked up heart-pounding as warriors moved to intercept the newcomer. It was Pike. His clothes were torn, his face streaked with dirt, and what looked like dried blood. He limped slightly, favoring his right leg, but he was alive. Bella ran to him, questions tumbling out before she could organize her thoughts. What happened? Where's Ravenwing? The others. Pike accepted water from a woman who brought it, drinking deeply before answering. Ambushed. The soldiers were more numerous than we expected, better prepared. They had trackers, Tonkawa scouts, who could read our movements. Cold fear gripped Bella. Ravenwing. Alive last I saw him, Pike assured her. We were separated during the fighting. Bearclaw, he shook his head. Bearclaw fell covering our escape. Swift Arrow was wounded but able to ride. The others scattered. And my father, Bella asked, dreading the answer. Leading the pursuit personally, Pike hesitated. He's not the man you knew, Bella. There's something changed in him, something broken. This isn't just about business or reputation anymore. It's obsession. Grey Wolf joined them, his young face grave beyond his years. Will they find this valley? Pike considered the question carefully. Not immediately. We laid false trails, divided their forces. But eventually, yes, if they're determined enough. The news spread through the camp, creating an undercurrent of anxiety. The sanctuary they had found might be temporary, their safety provisional. That night, Bella couldn't sleep. She sat by the dying campfire, staring into the embers, thoughts cycling between worry for Ravenwing and planning for what might come next. Pike joined her, his own rest disturbed by recent memories. Tell me everything, she requested. Don't soften it. Pike sighed, poking at the fire with a stick. We led them west for 2 days, leaving obvious signs making them think the entire tribe was heading toward the territorial border. It worked. Both companies converged on our trail just as we'd hoped. He described how they had planned to lose their pursuers in a labyrinth of canyons, then circle back east to rejoin the main group. But the Tonkawa trackers had anticipated this strategy, setting up an ambush at a narrow passage. The shooting started without warning. Bearclaw's horse went down immediately. He kept firing, covering us as we scattered. Pike's voice grew distant with memory. Last I saw him, he was still fighting, even with wounds that would have stopped most men. And Ravenwing, he and Swift Arrow broke east. 2 soldiers followed. Your father recognized him, called his name, ordered the men to take him alive if possible. Pike met her eyes directly. He wants Ravenwing, specifically Bella, not just as a fugitive, but as the boy who watched him murder his father, Bella finished. The living witness to his greatest crime. Pike nodded soberly. I think he believes that silencing Ravenwing will somehow erase that past. Allow him to reclaim his position, his power. And you? How did you escape? Went over a cliff into a river. They probably think I'm dead. He smiled grimly. Being underestimated has its advantages. Bella absorbed this information, her mind working through implications, possibilities. If Ravenwing is alive, he'll come here. He knows the way. If he can evade capture, Pike cautioned, your father has considerable resources at his command. Then we prepare, Bella said, a new resolve hardening within her. For Ravenwing's return, and for the possibility that my father will eventually find this place. In the days that followed, the tribe began establishing more permanent structures in the valley. Under Grey Wolf's leadership, they combined traditional Comanche building methods with techniques learned from white settlements, creating dwellings that utilized the best of both approaches. Bella and Maria organized the women to establish gardens, planting seeds they had carried with them, and indigenous plants identified by tribal elders. Pike, his leg healing, began teaching basic English to the children, using sticks to write letters in the dirt. A rhythm emerged, a blending of cultures that felt organic rather than forced. Cherokee words mingled with Comanche and English and Spanish, creating a hybrid language unique to their community. Cooking techniques combined, producing new flavors and methods of preservation. 2 weeks after Pike's arrival, as the valley settlement was taking tangible form, 2 more figures appeared at the entrance. Swift Arrow, his arm bound in a sling, accompanied by a Cherokee woman who introduced herself as Willow Song. We found each other on the trail, Swift Arrow explained. She seeks the same new beginning as we do. Willow Song had emerged, had fled an abusive husband in the Cherokee territory, bringing with her valuable knowledge of weaving and herbal medicine. She was welcomed into the growing community, another thread in the tapestry they were creating. But of Ravenwing there was no sign. Bella maintained outward calm, focusing on the daily work of building, growing, teaching. Inside, however, anxiety gnawed at her. Each day without word increased the possibility that he had been captured or worse. A month passed. The valley settlement flourished, its population growing as word spread through underground networks. A few Mexican families arrived, fleeing violence along the border. A white trapper and his Osage wife sought refuge from societal prejudice. Two former slaves making their way west after emancipation brought carpentry skills and stories from the Eastern War. Each newcomer was evaluated carefully, their intentions assessed. Not everyone was welcome. Those seeking merely to exploit or escape consequences, rather than build something new, were turned away. But for those committed to the vision, the valley offered what few places could: the freedom to exist beyond rigid categories, to live according to ability and contribution, rather than race or origin. Through it all, Bella's pregnancy progressed. Her body changed, rounding with new life, even as her heart remained suspended between hope and grief over Ravenwing's unknown fate. Then, as summer gave way to early autumn, a sentry reported a lone rider approaching the valley, a man on a paint horse moving slowly, as if injured. Bella was helping with the communal garden when the news reached her. She straightened, one hand going to her now prominent belly, the other clutching the pouch of sacred earth that never left her neck. Pike appeared at her side. "Come, we'll go together." They walked to the valley entrance, where warriors had already gathered, weapons ready but not raised. As the rider drew closer, his features became distinguishable, the proud profile, the eagle feather in his hair. Ravenwing. Bella's composure finally broke. She ran forward as he dismounted, their reunion, a collision of joy and relief and accumulated fear. He held her tightly, his face buried in her hair, his breath uneven with emotion. When they finally separated enough to look at each other, Bella saw the changes in him: a new scar across his cheek, a depth in his eyes that spoke of hardship endured. But he was alive. He had returned as promised. His hand moved to her belly, feeling the life growing there. "Our future," he murmured, wonder replacing exhaustion in his expression. That night, around the central fire of the now-established community, Ravenwing shared his story. After being separated from the others during the ambush, he had led pursuers on a lengthy chase, drawing them far from the valley's direction. Wounded in a skirmish, he had hidden in a cave for weeks, tended by an elderly Kiowa woman who had lost her own son to white violence. "When I was strong enough to travel, she guided me through her people's hunting grounds," he explained. "Paths no white man knows." "And my father?" Bella asked. "The soldiers?" Ravenwing's expression darkened. "Still searching. Your father has become obsessed. He offers rewards for information about you, about me. Some say his business affairs suffer from neglect, as he focuses only on finding us." "Hate is a poison that kills from within," Maria observed quietly. "Yes," Ravenwing agreed, "but a dangerous poison that may harm others before it claims him." Pike voiced what everyone was thinking. "You believe he'll eventually find this place?" "I believe we must be prepared for that possibility," Ravenwing answered carefully. "This valley is well hidden, defensible, but no sanctuary remains secret forever." The implications settled over the gathered community. Their peace might be temporary, their safety conditional. "Then we prepare," Grey Wolf said simply, "not just to defend, but to survive whatever comes." The community redoubled its efforts, establishing lookout points, creating emergency plans, ensuring food stores for winter. But alongside these precautions, they continued building for permanence, planting trees that would take years to bear fruit, constructing a schoolhouse where children of different backgrounds learned together. It was a balance between preparedness and hope, between acknowledging danger and refusing to let it define their existence. And winter came to the valley, bringing snow to the higher elevations and crisp, clear days. The community had grown to nearly 100 people, a microcosm of the larger world, with all its diversity of language, culture, and experience. In the schoolhouse, Pike had helped build children learned in multiple languages: English, Comanche, Cherokee, Spanish. They studied not only reading and mathematics, but also traditional skills from each culture, tracking, weaving, storytelling, music. Ravenwing and Bella established their home at the community center not from hierarchy, but from function, as their dwelling often served as a meeting place where decisions were discussed and conflicts resolved. As Bella's time drew near, women from all backgrounds shared their knowledge of childbirth. Maria prepared Hispanic remedies while Comanche midwives arranged the traditional birthing space. Willow Song contributed Cherokee prayers and herbal tonics. When labor began on a clear December morning, the entire community held its breath. The birth of this child, born of two worlds conceived in love, that defied boundaries, held symbolic significance beyond its personal importance. After hours of labor attended by women from 4 different cultures, Bella gave birth to a healthy girl. She had her mother's fair skin, but her father's dark eyes, a physical embodiment of their union, of the bridge between worlds that Ravenwing had foreseen. They named her Dawn in English, with a Comanche name that translated to Peace Blossom, a hope for what might grow from their difficult beginnings. The celebration that followed included traditions from every culture represented in the Valley Comanche, singing Cherokee, dancing Mexican food, African-American spirituals. It was not a forced blending, but an organic sharing, each tradition retaining its integrity while contributing to something larger. Pike, who had found unexpected purpose as the settlement's teacher, presented the child with a small book he had crafted by hand, pages bound in deerskin filled with stories from all the cultures of the valley. "So she'll know where she comes from," he explained. "All of it, not just pieces." As winter deepened, the routines of the settlement adjusted to the season. Hunting parties ventured out regularly, returning with game to supplement stored foods. In the evening, stories were shared around communal fires, tales that preserved history, wisdom, identity. Ravenwing often spoke of his vision quest, of the ancestors' guidance toward this new path. "They did not show me an easy road," he would say, "only a necessary one." Bella, recovering from childbirth, observed the community with wonder and occasional concern. What they had built was beautiful, meaningful, but also fragile. Its existence challenged powerful interests, defied established categories. Such defiance rarely went unpunished in the world they had left behind. Her fears proved prescient when, as winter began to loosen its grip on the land, a scout reported alarming news. A large contingent of soldiers, accompanied by Tonkawa trackers, had established a base camp in the foothills 2 days' ride from the valley. At their head was William Thornwood, still pursuing his obsession despite the passing months. "They question every traveler," the scout reported. "Offer rewards for information about renegade Comanche and a kidnapped white woman." The community gathered to consider this threat. Some advocated immediate evacuation, finding new sanctuary deeper in the mountains or further west. Others argued for armed defense of the valley they had come to call home. Ravenwing listened to all perspectives before speaking. "This place," he said, gesturing to the valley around them, "is not just land. It is an idea, a way of living that challenges everything they believe about how the world must be ordered." He looked at Bella, at Pike, at the diverse faces gathered around the council fire. "If we run, that idea dies. If we fight, many of us will die, and the idea may still be crushed beneath their boots." "What alternative remains?" Grey Wolf asked. Bella, who had been listening silently, the sleeping Dawn cradled in her arms, spoke up. "We make them see." All eyes turned to her. "My father pursues us because he believes he can erase the truth through force," she continued. "He thinks that if he captures or kills Ravenwing, if he drags me back to civilization, his crimes will remain hidden, his worldview validated." "And your solution?" Pike prompted. "Visibility," Bella answered. "Not hiding, not fighting, but standing openly in our truth, inviting witnesses who cannot be silenced." From this seed grew a bold plan. Pike would travel to Fort Smith, where Sullivan's newspaper had published the ledger's contents. He would bring the editor back to the valley along with any other journalists willing to make the journey. They would document what had been created here, not just a hideout for fugitives, but a functioning community that demonstrated a different possibility for coexistence. "Words and pictures can travel where we cannot," Bella explained, "can reach people we will never meet. If enough eyes see what we've built, it becomes harder to simply destroy it without consequence." The strategy was risky. It meant revealing their location, opening themselves to potential attack. But it also offered the possibility of protection through publicity, making their community too visible to be quietly eliminated. Pike departed 2 days later, carrying letters and crude maps. The community continued its preparations both for spring planting and for potential conflict. Defensive positions were established at the valley's entrance emergency routes, identified supplies cached in hidden locations. Through it all, life continued, children learned, meals were shared, ceremonies observed. The community refused to surrender its daily rhythms to fear, even as it acknowledged the danger approaching. 6 weeks after Pike's departure, sentries reported multiple riders approaching too many for a military advance party, moving openly rather than with stealth. The community gathered tense but determined. At their head rode Pike, accompanied by Sullivan from the Arkansas Truth and 3 other journalist representatives from newspapers in St. Louis, Chicago, and New York. Behind them came an unexpected figure, a federal Indian agent named Collins, known for his unorthodox views on native rights. They wanted to see for themselves, Pike explained as they were welcomed into the settlement, to document what's been created here. For the next week, the journalists explored the valley community, interviewing residents, observing daily life, sketching buildings, and activities for their publications. They were particularly struck by the schoolhouse, where children of diverse backgrounds learned together, and by the communal decision-making process that incorporated elements from multiple cultural traditions. Agent Collins, meanwhile, engaged in lengthy discussions with Raven Wing about the possibility of securing some form of official recognition for the settlement, not as a reservation with its restrictions and dependencies, but as an experimental community with limited autonomy. There are shifts occurring in Washington, Collins explained. Small openings where new approaches might find support. Not from everyone certainly, but from enough to matter. The journalists' presence provided a measure of security, but everyone understood it was temporary. Once they departed, the threat would remain, perhaps even intensify, once William Thornwood learned his daughter's location had been revealed. On the visitors' final evening, as they gathered around the central fire, the sound of approaching horses broke the night's calm. Warriors moved immediately to defensive positions, while families retreated to designated shelters. Through the valley's entrance rode a small contingent, 6 soldiers, led by a civilian whose rigid posture and silver hair were instantly recognizable to Bella. William Thornwood had found them at last. He dismounted at the edge of the firelight, his cold eyes sweeping the gathered community, before fixing on Bella, who stood with Dawn in her arms, Raven Wing beside her. "So," William said, his voice carrying in the tense silence, "this is where you've hidden yourself, playing savage with your captor." Bella stepped forward, chin raised. "No one has captured me, Father. I chose this life, this community, this man. Sachin." William's gaze shifted to the child in her arms, his expression contorting briefly before settling into cold disdain. "You've disgraced our name, contaminated our bloodline." "I've helped create something better than what you offered," Bella countered. "Something based on respect rather than domination, on cooperation rather than exploitation." The journalists had moved to the periphery, notebooks in hand, documenting this unexpected confrontation. Agent Collins stood slightly apart, observing with keen interest. William noticed them for the first time, his confidence faltering momentarily. "Who are these people?" "Witnesses," Sullivan answered, stepping forward. "Representatives of major newspapers. Here to document this community and whatever happens to it." William's jaw tightened. He turned to the soldiers accompanying him. "Arrest the Indian. He's wanted for kidnapping, assault on federal officers, and inciting rebellion." "Herney." The soldiers hesitated, looking uncertainly between William the journalist and Agent Collins. "I believe you'll find no legal basis for such an arrest," Collins interjected smoothly. "As a federal representative, I've reviewed the situation and found no evidence of kidnapping or rebellion. As for the alleged assault on Marshals, there are serious questions about the legitimacy of those Marshals' actions." William's face flushed with anger. "You overstep your authority, Agent Collins." "On the contrary," Collins replied, "I am exercising it appropriately for perhaps the first time. These people have established a peaceful community, harming no one. They have the right to live unmolested." They're fugitives, William sputtered. Criminals. According to whom? Sullivan challenged. The same men implicated in the trafficking network exposed by Hawthorne's ledger. Men whose corruption has been documented in newspapers across the country? William turned to Bella, desperation replacing anger. Daughter, you've been misled, manipulated. Come home with me. Bring the child if you must. We can still salvage something from this disgrace. There is no disgrace here, Bella replied calmly. Only a different way of living, a better way. She stepped closer to her father, close enough to see the lines that months of obsessive pursuit had etched into his face, the haunted look in his eyes. Let it go, father, she said softly. The world you're fighting to preserve is already changing. The power you've built through fear and exploitation is already crumbling. For a moment, just a moment, something vulnerable flashed across William's features. Then the mask of cold control returned. You're dead to me, he said flatly. You and your half-breed child both. He turned to remount his horse, but Ravenwing's voice stopped him. 15 years ago, you murdered my father when he offered peace, Ravenwing said, stepping forward. You've built your fortune on blood and lies. That truth won't die, Thornwood, even if you kill me. Too many know it now. William stared at him, recognition and hatred warring in his expression. You're the boy, the chief's son. I am, Ravenwing confirmed, but I am also more than that now. As are you, more than a murderer, if you choose to be. Something shifted in William's posture, a subtle change that only Bella, who had known him all her life, could recognize. The rigid certainty that had defined him seemed to waver, replaced by the confusion of a man confronting the collapse of his worldview. Without another word, he mounted his horse and rode away, the soldiers following, after exchanging uncertain glances. The confrontation had ended, not with violence but with retreat. Not victory, perhaps, but space to continue what they had begun. The journalists departed the next day, carrying sketches, interviews, and detailed accounts of the Valley community. Within weeks, their stories began appearing in newspapers across the country, not hidden in back pages, but featured prominently, capturing public imagination with the vision of a different kind of frontier settlement. Letters arrived from readers inspired by what they had read, some asking to join the community, others offering support or resources. Agent Collins made good on his promise, securing limited recognition for the settlement as an experimental cooperative community under unusual federal protection. William Thornwood never returned to the valley. Reports filtered back that he had retreated to his estate, his business interests declining as partners distanced themselves from his tarnished reputation. The obsession that had driven him to pursue Bella seemed to have burned itself out, leaving only the hollow shell of a once powerful man. As spring gave way to summer, the valley settlement continued to grow, both in population and in structure. New dwellings were built, fields expanded, a small trading post established for interaction with passing travelers. Pike's schoolhouse added more students, more subjects, more teachers, drawing from diverse traditions. One warm evening, as the community gathered for a shared meal, Bella sat with Dawn in her lap, watching Ravenwing teach a group of children, Comanche, Cherokee, Mexican, white-black, a traditional dance. His movements were graceful, patient, his face alight with the pleasure of transmission rather than imposition. Maria settled beside her, her weathered face softened by contentment. So, she said, nodding toward the scene before them, this is the different life you spoke of. The beginning of it, Bella amended, bouncing Dawn gently on her knee. Just the beginning. She looked around at what they had created, not perfect, not without tensions and challenges, but vital and genuine. A community that acknowledged differences while seeking common ground, that preserved traditions while adapting to new realities. Some wounds, she reflected, thinking of the journey that had brought them here, can only heal when we stop inflicting new ones. Dawn reached toward her father, gurgling happily as he danced. Ravenwing caught the movement, his eyes meeting Bella's across the distance, a look of shared understanding of promises kept and visions made real. In the fading light, as shadows lengthened across the valley floor, they continued building their improbable community, neither white nor Comanche, neither old nor new, but something altogether different. A third path carved between opposing forces, a healing space where wounds of the past might finally begin to close. Not through forgetting, but through creating something worth remembering.